The sand is almost gone. You are standing at the back of a wooden ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere around the 6th week of a voyage from England to the American colonies. In the year 1715, it is close to midnight. The only light on this whole ship is a small lamp in a copper bowl, hooded with canvas, so it spills its glow on one thing only: the compass card, trembling and settling, like something alive and half asleep. And beside that lamp, in a wooden frame screwed to the rail, stands an hourglass. Your hourglass. For the past half hour, you have watched the sand run through its narrow waist, grain by grain. And your whole job in this world, the job they gave you when the ship's boy hurt his wrist, is to be standing right here when the last grain falls. It falls. You turn the glass. Then you reach for the lanyard of the ship's bell, and you ring it the way the bosun taught you, in pairs. Unhurried. 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. 8 bells. Midnight. The watch is changing. From the bow, far forward in the dark, a voice comes back to you over the sound of water running along the hull. All's well, it calls, low and easy. Below your feet, under the deckboards, 80 souls are sleeping in a wooden world 3,000 miles from anywhere, and every one of them heard that bell somewhere down inside their sleep, and every one of them slept on. 9 weeks ago you had never seen the ocean. Tonight, you are the keeper of its time. This is the story of how you got here. Friends, welcome back. Tonight, we are crossing an ocean together. The slow way, the 1715 way, aboard a merchant ship bound out of England for the Chesapeake colonies. It is a long road, 9 weeks of it, and we will walk it one watch at a time. If these journeys help you rest, a like or a subscribe truly helps me keep making them. And tell me in the comments where in the world you are listening tonight. I love knowing this old ship is carrying so many of you at once. Now, dim the lights. Get comfortable. The tide will not turn for a while yet. And we have time, all the time in the world, to go back to the very beginning. Back to the last night you ever spent on English ground. The inn stands close enough to the River Thames that you can hear it through the wall. A big, patient sliding sound under everything. Under the talk and the fire and the rain on the window. The sound of water on its way to the sea. It is early spring in the year 1715, and you are lying on one half of a shared bed in a room above the tap room of an inn at Gravesend, the last town of any size before the river opens its mouth and becomes the world. You have never slept in an inn before tonight. You have never been this far from the parish where you were born, which lies 2 days behind you now. Up roads you walked with everything you own in a wooden chest, small enough for one man to carry, and heavy enough that one man knows he carried it. The chest is under the bed. You have checked on it 3 times. Downstairs. The tap room is full of people who are all, in one way or another, waiting on the same tide. Through the floorboards, their voices come up warm and blurred, and every so often a single line surfaces out of the murmur. the way a fish breaks a pond. Somebody says the word Virginia. Somebody says the word wages. Somebody laughs too loud and is shushed. And the river keeps sliding past, outside. Patient as a grandfather. You cannot sleep, so you go down. The fire in the tap room has burned to that deep orange hour when nobody adds a log because nobody wants to admit the evening is over. 24 people are gathered in its light, and you will come to know some of these faces very well indeed, though you do not know that yet. A stonemason from Kent with hands like his own trade. A young family in the corner. A husband and wife and a girl of about 7 asleep across both their laps at once. An old woman knitting something gray without once looking at it. Working people, nearly all of them, dressed in clothes that have been mended by firelight, carrying their lives in bundles and boxes stacked along the wall like cargo that learned to walk. And all of them are listening to a letter. A man near the fire is holding a single sheet of paper that has been folded and unfolded so many times the creases have gone soft as cloth, and he is reading it out loud, slowly, the way you read something you half know by heart. It is from his cousin. He tells the room, a man who crossed to Virginia 3 years back, and the letter says what half the letters in England seem to say that spring, in kitchens and tap rooms and churchyards, wherever working people gather. It says there is land there, more land than people. It says a man who can swing an axe or lay a hedge or plow a straight furrow is worth real wages there, paid in tobacco, which spends like money because it is money. It says the woods run back from the rivers farther than anyone has walked, and the rivers are so wide the ships sail right up into the country and tie up at a planter's own dock, like a wagon pulling into a farmyard. It says, and here the man reading slows down, because this is the line the whole room has been waiting for. Tell my brothers, there is room here. Tell them a poor man's sweat buys something here. Nobody speaks for a moment. The fire ticks. The river slides. Then the old knitting woman says, without dropping a stitch, and what does he say about the crossing? And the man folds the letter along its soft creases and says, he says, the less said about the crossing, the better. And the whole room laughs. The low, knowing laugh of people who have all heard that answer before, and are all going anyway. You find a place on a bench near the wall, and you listen. And this is where we should be honest about what has brought all these people, and you, to this inn by this river. England in 1715 is not starving, but it is crowded, and it is expensive, and it is tired. Bread costs what it costs, and a laboring man's wages have a way of being spent before they are earned. The old queen died last summer, Queen Anne, and a new king has come over from Germany, King George. And up in the north there is talk of risings and troubles, men drilling on moors for a cause you do not entirely follow. Twice this week you have stood aside on the road to let soldiers pass, and the country has the feeling of a house where the grown-ups are arguing in another room. Nothing has happened to you. Nothing needs to. It is just that when a man stands in the rain holding everything he owns, and one road leads back to a village where the work is spoken for, and the land is fenced, and his father's cottage will go to his older brother. and the other road leads down to a river full of ships. The arguing house makes the choice easier. You are young. Your back is good. You can read a little. Write your name. Handle stock. Swing a scythe all day. In England, that makes you one of 10,000. In Virginia, says, every letter read aloud by every fire this spring. That makes you a man worth feeding. There is only one problem, and it is the problem that has you lying awake tonight while the river slides past. And it is very simple. Passage across the Atlantic Ocean costs about £6. You have never held £6 in your life. Upstairs. Later. You lie back down on your half of the bed and listen to the inn settle. Somewhere below, a last pair of boots crosses the floor. The rain lets up, and through the wall, the Thames goes on about its business, sliding seaward in the dark, carrying tomorrow's tide down to meet the ships. And you lie there doing the arithmetic every poor traveler at this inn has done before you. £6 against 4 years, because there is a way across the ocean for a man with no money. There has been for 100 years. Tomorrow morning, at a table in this very inn, a man with an ink bottle and a strong box is going to explain it to you. And you are going to sign your name to it. And it is going to cost you nothing at all. And everything. But that is tomorrow's business. Tonight there is just the rain stopping, and the river sliding, and a room full of strangers breathing slow around you. All of them dreaming, if they are dreaming at all, of the same wide water. Sleep now. Traveler, it is the last night. England will hold you. Tomorrow you sign. Morning comes to Gravesend grey and busy, with gulls making a market above the rooftops and every window in the inn lit early. And by the time you have splashed your face at the yard pump, word has already gone around among the travelers. The agent is here. He has taken the small parlor at the back. He is seeing people after breakfast. You know what he is, more or less. Everyone at that fire last night knew. He works for a merchant house in London, and his business is filling ships. A vessel bound for the Chesapeake earns money on everything she carries, on the cloth in her hold, and the tools in her crates, and on people, because in Virginia, the one thing scarcer than money is hands. The planters there will pay good tobacco for a healthy worker off an English ship, and so a trade has grown up around that simple fact. And this man, with his ink bottle, is the shape it takes at an inn by the Thames on a spring morning. You wait your turn in the passage outside the parlor. And it is a strange thing to stand in a line of people who are all about to make the same bargain, because nobody talks much, and everybody watches the door. The stonemason from Kent goes in ahead of you. He is inside a long while. When he comes out, he is folding a paper into his coat with great care, and his face is the face of a man who has jumped off something and not landed yet. Then it is your turn. The parlor is small and smells of ink and candle smoke and yesterday's fire. The agent sits behind a plain table with a ledger, a stack of printed forms, a strong box with its lid down, and a sand shaker for drying wet ink. He is maybe 50, dressed decent but not fine. And here is the truth of him, and you may as well have it straight. He is neither a devil nor a friend. He is a man doing figures. He has done this table at this inn 100 times. And he looks at you the way a farmer looks at weather, reading what you are worth to him and what you will cost. He asks your age, your parish, your trade, whether you can read. He slides a Bible verse across the table, upside down to him, and you read it out, slow but true, and he nods and writes something small in his ledger. He asks after your health, looks at your teeth the way you have seen men look at a horse's, asks you to show him your hands, palm up, and when he sees the calluses in them, laid down by scythe and spade over your whole working life, he nods again, and that nod is worth more to him than any letter of reference in your chest. Then he lays out the bargain, plain as a bill of goods. And this part he says the same way every time, worn smooth from repeating. Passage to Virginia costs £6. He says, you have not got £6, so instead, you will pay with time, 4 years of it. He will carry you over at the merchant's expense, feed you on the voyage same as any passenger. And when the ship comes to anchor in Virginia, your indenture will be sold to a planter there, and the price the planter pays buys out your passage. For 4 years you will work for that man, at his tobacco or his timber or whatever his land needs. He must feed you, clothe you, house you, and keep you in reasonable health. All of it written down, all of it enforceable in a Virginia court. And yes, he says, seeing your face, the courts there do hear such cases. Servants win them oftener than you would credit. And at the end of the 4 years, he says, you walk off that plantation, a free man, with your freedom dues in your hands, clothes, tools, a little money, or its worth in goods, whatever custom and your contract call for. Half the men unloading ships in Virginia this minute came over just this way. He says, so did some of the men who now own the ships. He does not tell you it will be easy. Give him that much. He tells you the work is hot and the summers are fevered, and 4 years is 4 years. But he tells it like a man reading out a fair price. And in his mind, that is exactly what he is doing. And now he does the thing you will remember all your life, the thing the whole business takes its name from. He takes one of the printed forms, fills your particulars into the blank spaces, your name, your age, the term of 4 years, the destination of Virginia, and then he copies the whole thing out again on the lower half of the same sheet. 2 contracts, twin as reflections, one above the other on one piece of paper. He signs both. You sign both, your name coming out slow and a little large, the way it does when your hand knows the moment matters. Then he picks up a pair of scissors, and he cuts the sheet in 2, and he does not cut it straight. He cuts it in waves, in teeth, a jagged line right through the middle where the 2 copies meet, so that each half carries the print of the other along its torn edge. One half he keeps for the merchant house. The other half he shakes sand over, blows clean, folds, and hands across the table to you. Indenture, he says, tapping the toothed edge from the teeth, like the teeth of a dog. Anywhere in the king's dominions, you set your half against ours, and the teeth marry up. And no forger alive can counterfeit a tear. That paper is your passage, your contract, and your proof. Guard it like your soul. You walk out of that parlor into the gray morning light, holding 4 years of your life folded into a square of paper. And the strange thing, the thing you could not have guessed, is how light you feel. The arithmetic that kept you awake is done. The door you could not afford is open. You go up to the room and kneel at your chest and stow the indenture flat at the very bottom, under your spare shirt, beside the letter of introduction. And you press your palm on the lid a moment, the way a man touches a fence post he has just set. There is one more thing to say, and it belongs here, in this chapter, told plain and then set down gently. Not everyone who crossed the ocean in 1715 signed at a table. Some came because a judge sent them, working off a sentence instead of a debt. And far to the south of the routes the English ships ran. Other ships were crossing that same ocean, that same spring, carrying African men and women and children who signed nothing, who were asked nothing, for whom there was no term of years and no freedom dues and no tooth paper to guard. And you will stand within sight of that truth before this story is over. When you reach the far shore, it deserves better than a passing sentence, and it will get its full and honest telling before we part tonight. For now, know that the ocean you are about to cross carried many kinds of voyages, and yours, hard as it will be, was one of the luckier kinds. You come back down to the tap room at noon, and the stonemason catches your eye across the room and raises his mug about an inch. And you raise yours, and neither of you says anything, because there is nothing to say. You are shipmates now. The word around the inn is that the ship drops down from London on tomorrow's tide. She comes down the river on the morning tide with the sun barely up, and the first you see of her is her masts moving above the rooftops of the waterfront. 2 tall pines gliding along behind the chimneys, like trees that have learned to walk. And then you come around the corner of the sail loft onto the open quay, and there she is, entire, swinging to her anchor in the stream. Your ship, she is a brig, 2-masted, maybe 150 tons, which sounds large until you understand it is going to hold your whole world for the next 2 months and more. Her hull is fat and round as a walnut shell, built to carry, not to race. Her sides dark with tar, her sails furled up along the yards in long gray bundles like sleeping birds. Men are moving on her deck already, small at this distance, and between her and the quay, the river is alive with boats, wherries, and lighters shuttling back and forth, every one of them loaded to the gunwales with the makings of a voyage. You spend that whole day on the quay, because everyone does, because the ship is not ready, and the tide is not right, and there is nowhere else on earth you need to be. And what you watch, hour by hour, is a town packing itself into a walnut shell. The heavy cargo goes first, swung out on tackles from the lighters, while a mate leans over the rail calling the count. Bales of woolen cloth sewn up in canvas, crates of iron goods, axe heads and hoe blades and hinges and nails by the barrel. Because in Virginia, a sailor on the quay tells you, they will pull down a house and burn it just to sift the nails out of the ashes. Iron being that dear, casks of beer, boxes of window glass packed in straw, everything a colony of farmers cannot yet make for itself, which is nearly everything, all of it disappearing down her main hatch into the hold, and the ship settling lower and lower on her lines through the day, like a pack horse standing patient while the load goes on. Then the water. This is the sight that stops you, though you do not fully take its meaning until later. Cask after cask after cask. Big hogsheads, dark with wet, swayed up and struck down into the hold all through the afternoon. Dozens of them, until you ask the sailor, how many? And he squints and says, enough for 80 souls for 3 months, if the master is careful. And God send he is careful. And you look at the river running past, a whole country's worth of fresh water sliding by free of charge. And you understand for the first time, standing right there on solid stone, that you are going to a place where water is counted. Toward evening, the animals come aboard, and the quay turns briefly into a farmyard. Crates of hens, complaining all the way up and over the rail. A pig, and a brown nanny goat who comes up the gangplank on a halter, calm as a churchwarden, because her milk is bespoke for the captain's table and for any sick child aboard. And she has made this crossing twice already, which is 2 times more than you. She looks at the ocean end of the river with no opinion at all. You will come to admire that goat, and, through it all, threading between the barrows and the ropes and the shouting, come the passengers with their worldly goods, gathering on the quay in little islands of family. The stonemason with his tool bags, the young family from the fire, the girl of 7 riding her father's shoulders above the crowd, the old knitting woman, directing 2 grandsons and a dockhand around her boxes like a general. 30, 40, 50 of you by the end. Working folk, mostly. A few better dressed who will have cabins aft. All standing among your bundles, doing the same thing. Trying to look at the ship and look easy about it. And not one of you managing. The officer at the gangway checks your name against the merchant's list. Looks once in your chest. Tools and clothing and papers. Nods you through. And when your 2 feet land on her deck for the first time, the deck moves. Just a little. Just the river breathing under her. But your body notices. The way a body notices a floor is alive. And files the fact away somewhere deep. You do not sail that evening. Ships almost never do. The wind is foul for the channel. The master wants his trim right. And so you spend your first night aboard at anchor within a stone's throw of England, swinging slow on the tide, listening to the water talk along the planks beside your head, a sound you will hear every night for 9 weeks, and which tonight is brand new. The wind comes fair on the 2nd morning, and the ship wakes all at once. Bare feet by the dozen hit the deck. The capstan is manned, and the anchor comes up out of the Thames mud to a slow working chant. Not any song, you know, just a rhythm with breath in it. Heave and rest and heave. The sails fall open, one after another, down the masts. Gray, then white as they fill, and the land begins to slide. Here is what nobody had told you about leaving England. It happens slowly. There is no clean moment of goodbye. No door swinging shut. The ship gathers the river's speed and adds her own, and the banks of the Thames open into the wide flats of the estuary. And England simply spreads itself out and lies down, going low and green and long on either side, and stays in sight for hours. Marsh, then shoreline, then a church tower you can count the windows of, then one you cannot. Beside you at the rail, the old knitting woman stands watching the shore, with her needles put away for once. And after a long while she folds her hands and turns and goes below, the first of anyone to do it. Time enough to look, she says as she passes, when there is less of it to see. By late afternoon, the land has thinned to a pencil line lying on the northern horizon, and the swell coming up the channel has put a slow roll under the deck, and the girl of 7 has been sick over the rail twice, and is very proud of having managed it to leeward, because a sailor told her that is the seaman-like side, and the sun is going down astern of you, over England, gilding the line of it. You stand at the stern rail and watch that line, and you learn what the horizon is going to mean to you now. All your life, it was where the next parish began. From this evening on, it is the whole shape of the world, a circle drawn around the ship, and everything you love is about to slip below the western edge of it. The line thins, goes gray, goes, and then it is just water, and the creak of the rigging, and the first stars coming out over the channel, and somewhere forward a sailor's voice, easy and unhurried, calling the first all's well of the open sea. The English Channel has been schooling travelers for as long as there have been travelers, and it begins your own education about an hour after supper on that first evening at sea, when the ship puts her shoulder into the first real swell rolling up from the west, and your stomach, which has served you loyally for all the years of your life, hands in its notice. You will not be alone. That is the one mercy of it. By midnight, the passenger quarters below deck have become a single, miserable congregation. 40 people lying in the dark in various stages of surrender, while the ship rolls slow and steady and endless. And every roll is answered from some corner by a groan. And the groans have accents. Kent and London and the West Country, all suffering together in the dark. And somewhere in the middle of it, a small girl's voice asks her mother, very seriously, if people can die of this, and her mother says no, sweetheart. And a man's voice comes out of the dark from 3 berths over, worse luck. And the whole compartment laughs and groans at the same time, which hurts everybody and serves everybody right. Here's what is actually happening to you, though nobody aboard would put it this way. Your body has spent its whole life on ground that holds still, and it has built its balance on that promise. And now the promise is broken, and your body is sure, down in its oldest cellars, that something is deeply wrong, and it is doing the only thing it knows to do about it. The sailors have a different way of saying this. They say you have not got your sea legs, and they say it without any meanness. The way you might say a colt has not been broken to harness, because every last one of them lay exactly where you are lying once, and was sure he would die, and did not. It is the boatswain who takes you in hand. And this is the right place to introduce him, because after the ship herself, no one will matter more to your crossing. His name is Hale. He is somewhere past 50, built low and wide, like something meant to bear weight. And he has been going back and forth across this ocean since before you were born. Most of those years on the tobacco ships, out with cloth and iron, home with Virginia leaf. He's the bosun, which means the sails and the ropes and the daily working of the ship are his kingdom, and the crew answer to him the way a farm answers to its foreman. He does not say 10 words where 3 will carry. And when he finds you at the lee rail on the second morning, gray as a dish rag and holding on with both hands, he looks you over, the way he might look over a splice that needed making, and he gives you your first lesson at sea. Come out of the middle of the ship, he says. Stand where you can see the edge of the world. And he plants you at the rail with your face to the horizon. And it is the strangest thing, but that flat blue line is medicine. Below deck your eyes had nothing to hold, and your body was lost. Out here your eyes find the one thing in all this moving world that holds still, and something in you begins, very slowly, to settle around it. Watch the line. Hale says, let the ship do her rolling under you. She is not trying to throw you. Lad, you are trying to fight her, and she outweighs you. Then he teaches you the rest of it. Short and plain, the whole of the sailor's cure. Keep something small in your stomach, even when it argues. A piece of ship's biscuit, gnawed slow, is best. For an empty stomach pitches worse than a loaded hold. Take your water in sips. Below deck, lie down the long way of the ship. Head toward the stern. So the rolling rocks you side to side like a cradle, instead of standing you on your head and your heels by turns. And come up into the air every day, whatever the weather, because misery loves a dark corner, and the cure for a dark corner is the sky. You do as you are told, because you are past pride. And the queer thing is that it works, not all at once, but the way spring works, a little more each day. On the 3rd day you keep down a biscuit. On the 4th you are hungry, actually hungry, and you eat salt, pork, and peas, and feel like a king. And on the 5th day you notice, crossing the deck with the ship rolling along under a fine westerly, that you have stopped thinking about your feet. Your knees have learned the rhythm without asking you. Your body has stopped arguing with the sea and started dancing with it. And you did not decide this. It simply happened. The oldest treaty in the world, signed again in your own bones. The ship, meanwhile, has been working her way down the channel. England, a low gray presence off the starboard side by day, a scatter of far lights by night. And toward the end of that first week, she rounds up into a wide anchorage in the lee of the Isle of Wight, off the little port of Cowes, where the westbound ships gather to top off their water and their patience, and wait for a slant of wind, fair for the open Atlantic. You lie there 3 days. The ship rides easy in sheltered water, and the passengers heel and eat and climb into the sunshine, looking like people again. Boats come out from the town selling bread and eggs and fresh greens, and everyone buys what they can, because Some instinct tells even the greenest passenger that fresh anything is about to become a memory. And on the third evening the wind hauls fair, and Hale passes along the deck at dusk saying, "Quiet," to nobody in particular. We sail on the morning tide. That night, your last in England's waters, you lie in your berth and listen to the water slap the planks. And you notice you are lying the long way of the ship, head to the stern, biscuit in your pocket, rocking easy as a cradle. Already the body learns. Already this wooden world is teaching you its ways. Tomorrow, the ocean, the wind that carries you out past the Needles and into the open sea holds steady for 2 days and then falls light. And the ship slows to a walk, sails full but barely pulling, the water sliding by with hardly a sound. And it is on this first slow day that you truly come to know the ship. Because the cook has a use for an idle young man, and so does everyone else. It begins with firewood. The cook wants an armload brought aft from the forward hold, and you are standing nearest. And that is the whole story of how you are drafted. But one errand breeds another aboard a ship, the way it does on a farm. And by the end of that day, you have carried wood and coiled rope and shifted casks and held a lantern for the carpenter. And without anyone intending it, you have been given the grand tour of the little wooden world that is going to hold your life for the next 2 months. So, walk it with me, the way you walked it that day. Begin at the bow, the sharp end, the front, right up in the eyes of the ship, where the deck narrows to a point above the cutwater. There is a small railed platform hanging out over the sea, and this is the ship's necessary house, the place where all souls aboard, high and low, answer nature's call, perched above running water with the whole Atlantic for plumbing. The sailors call it the head, and they say the name so plainly that within a week you will too. It is breezy. It is public in a way no farm privy ever was. And in any kind of weather, it is an adventure. There is a reason. You now understand that sailors make so many jokes, and half of them are about this platform. Walk aft along the main deck. Here is the true crossroads of the village, the waist of the ship, where the boats are stowed upside down on their skids, and the spare spars are lashed along the rails, and where the passengers gather on fair days to take the air. And here, amidships, stands the thing you will come to love best aboard, the cook's hearth. It lives in a great box lined with brick and sand, and in it burns the only fire allowed on the whole ship, the one flame. Watched the way you would watch a wolf, you had somehow trained to pull a plow. On it sits a copper pot near big enough to bathe in, and out of that pot, twice a day, comes the food of 80 people, and around it hangs the smell of wood smoke and boiled pork that says home in every language aboard. Fire is the one master everyone fears out here. Hale tells you, watching you watch it. Water we can fight. Fire owns a wooden ship, and you see it then? The sand buckets, ranked around the hearth like sentries. And the cook's boy, who does nothing all day but mind the flame, now go below, down the steep ladder at the main hatch, and let your eyes come around to the dark. This is the hold, the belly, and it smells like England packed in a box. New wool and cut iron and beer and tarred rope and river water, all of it stacked and wedged and lashed into a solid mass. Bales and crates and barrels fitted together tighter than a stone wall, because cargo that shifts in a storm can heel a ship over and hold her down. Somewhere down here, too, is the water, tier on tier of great dark casks, and the carpenter walks the tiers every day with his lantern and his ear, listening to the barrel, tapping them the way a doctor taps a chest. Forward of the cargo, in the bow, the crew sling their hammocks in a space you could not stand straight in. And aft, under the raised deck at the stern, is the other end of the village, the captain's cabin with its stern windows and its chart table, and the 2 or 3 small cabins of the paying passengers. Folk who laid down £6 or 10 for a door that shuts. You see this end of the ship only on errands. The invitation to linger is not extended, and none aboard expects it to be. A ship, you are learning, is England folded small. The same ladder runs through it, top to bottom. Only here the rungs are made of planking, and you can walk the whole length of the kingdom in 40 paces. And amidships, between the crew and the cabins, in the space the cargo spared, is your own country. The passenger quarters run maybe 40 feet, breast high at the beams, so that grown folk go stooped, and down both sides run the sleeping berths, built of rough deal boards by the carpenter before you sailed, stacked too high, each one the width of a farm gate, and meant to sleep too. Your chest is your chair there, your table, your pantry, and your bank. Families have hung blankets and shawls between berths, and those wool walls are all the privacy there is. And it is enough, because it has to be. 40 people breathe that air together, sleep and wake and pray and quarrel, and make it up again in one room the size of a barn floor. And already, only days out, it has begun to organize itself the way any village does. This end quiet, that end lively. The old knitting woman holding one corner like a magistrate. The children owning the middle of the floor between meals as completely as they own any green in England. That evening, your wages for the day's errands come in the form of supper from the first serving, handed to you by the cook himself at the hearth, and you carry your wooden bowl aft and sit on a spar in the last of the light. The stonemason settles beside you with his own bowl. Far below, in the hold you now know, the cargo lies quiet, and under it the water casks, and around it all the oak sides of her. 4 inches of good English tree between 80 souls and the whole gray Atlantic. Snug little town, the stonemason says, looking down the length of her, and he means it. And so do you. She is 70 paces of wood, and she is carrying a fire, a farmyard, a warehouse, a well, a church's worth of souls, and a kingdom's worth of ladders, west into open water at the pace of a man walking, and the wind is freshening. There is a morning, about a week out, that you will remember all your life, and nothing happens on it at all. You come up the ladder at first light with the slop bucket, one of the small chores that have quietly become yours, and you empty it to leeward like a seasoned hand, and you straighten up and look around, and you stop. The land is gone. You knew it would be. It has been thinning for days. A smudge, a suggestion, a low cloud that might have been Cornwall or might have been cloud. But this morning, the circle is closed. You turn all the way around, slow, with the bucket still in your hand, and there is water to the edge of the world in every direction. And the edge of the world is exactly the same distance away everywhere you look. And you are standing at the center of a great blue plate with a pewter sky set down over it like a lid. And every soul aboard does what you are doing. That first landless morning, all day, on, by, on, passengers come up the ladder, look about at nothing, and stand there in the grip of it. The great circle. Some go pale and hurry back down to where the wooden walls make the world small again. Some pray. The little girl from the fireside inn looks around the whole horizon once and asks her father where the rest of it is, which is the question everyone is asking behind their faces. And her father has no answer, so he puts her up on his shoulders, which is the answer. You would expect fear, and there is a cold thread of it. But what surprises you is the other thing, the bigger thing, the thing you have no word for yet. The sky over your village at home was a strip between hedgerows. The sky here goes all the way down to the water on every side, the whole dome of it at once, and the sea under it is not empty. It is enormous, alive with light, changing by the hour, and something in your chest that has been folded up your whole life slowly opens out flat. Way is the word, though you will not find it until years later, telling this story to your grandchildren. But a question comes with that morning. And it comes to every passenger, and it grows all day until it has to be asked out loud. If every direction looks the same, how does anyone know where we are? It is the stonemason who finally asks it. At the rail, toward evening, of Hale, who is coiling a line nearby, and Hale looks at him a moment, and then at you. And something in the old sailor decides the question was honestly meant. Come aft after supper, he says. Both of you? Watch how a ship finds her way. That evening changes how you see everything. And I want to walk you through it slowly. Because what you are shown at the stern of that brig is the whole hidden craft that made the ocean crossable. In the days before any machine could do it. First, Hale shows you the compass. It lives in a wooden housing by the helm, lit at night by a little lamp, and inside, floating on its pivot, is the card with its 32 points, and it trembles and settles, trembles and settles, always coming back to face the same way, like a dog that always knows where home is. This tells us where we point, Hale says. That is all it tells. A man can point at Virginia all day and starve before he finds it, if he does not know two things more: how fast and how long. Then he shows you how fast, and this is the part you will love. A sailor brings aft a wooden reel wound with light line, and at the end of the line is a flat wooden quarter circle weighted along one edge, called the chip, knotted into the line. At even spacings are little tags of cord. The sailor heaves the chip over the stern, where it bites into the water and stands like a tiny anchor. And the line begins to run out over the rail as the ship walks away from it. And the moment the first mark passes his fingers, the sailor calls turn, and a second man turns a small sand glass, a little brother of your night glass, made to run just 28 seconds. And then, friend, you stand there in the dusk and watch a man count the speed of a ship through his bare fingers. The line runs. The knots pass one by one, whispering over the rail, and he counts them the way a woman counts stitches. And when the sand runs out, the second man calls stop, and the sailor grips the line, and the count is the speed. 5 knots have passed. So 5 knots is her pace. And that is why, to this day, 300 years on, the speed of every ship and every airplane on Earth is still given in knots. You are watching the word being earned. How long is the sand glasses, the bells, the watches, the steady halving of every day into measured pieces? And where we point, how fast and how long, written down faithfully every watch in the master's book, with the course steered and the miles run. That is the whole art. Hale says, dead reckoning. It is called, every day the master pricks the chart. Here is where we were yesterday. Here is the course we steered. Here is the distance we ran. So here is where we are today. One guess stacked on another, corrected by the sun. The sun is the backstaff, which the master brings out at noon on every clear day, a wooden instrument of arcs and veins, and he stands with his back to the sun, which is how the instrument got its name, and measures how high the sun rides at its highest. And from that one number he can tell, close as makes no difference, how far north or south of home the ship lies, her latitude. And that, Hale says, is the secret of the whole road to America. We do not sail toward Virginia. Lad, we sail south first, down toward the latitude of the Chesapeake. And when the noon sun tells us we have found it, we put the ship's head west, and we hold that latitude across the whole ocean, checking the sun every noon, running down the line like a wagon in a rut. And at the far end of the rut is Virginia. But east and west, the stonemason says, how far along the rut? How do you measure that? And Hale is cute a moment, and then he gives you the truth that no landsman ever suspects, and gives it as easily as telling the time. We do not. He says, no man alive can measure it. Not rightly. Not at sea. There is no instrument for it. The reckoning gives us a guess, and the guess grows looser every week. And a master who thinks his guess is gospel is a master who finds the shore at midnight with his keel. He nods forward, toward the west, toward 3,000 miles of unmeasured water. They have even made it law now. He says, just last year, the Parliament in London posted a prize, £20,000, a fortune, king's money, to any man on earth who can teach a ship to know how far east or west she stands. The wise heads say it will want a clock that keeps true time at sea, and no such clock exists, and maybe none ever will. So the money sits there waiting, and we do what sailors have always done. He straightens the coil on its pin and gives you the sentence you will carry off this ship and keep. Nobody on this ocean knows exactly where they are, he says. Not us, not the King's Navy, not the Spaniard. Nobody. We know near enough, and we mind the sun and we mind a lead when we smell the land. And near enough, minded well, has carried me over this water more times than I own teeth. Sailing is the trade of near enough. Lad, you will sleep better once you befriend it. And the strange thing is, you do. That very night, lying in your berth, you think about the little lamp glowing over the compass card up there in the dark, and the man at the helm holding her steady west by south, and the master's book with its columns of courses and guesses, and the whole patient craft of it, sun by sun, glass by glass, knot by knot, and it does not frighten you. It sounds like plowing, line by line, and trust the field to end where the hedge was yesterday. You sleep. Now we must talk about food, because on a long voyage, food stops being a pleasure or a habit and becomes the calendar itself. And everyone aboard can tell you what week of the crossing it is by what supper does when it hits the bowl. Begin with the bread, because the bread is the foundation of everything. And the bread is not bread. It is ship's biscuit, and it is baked in England in its thousands. Flour and water and salt and nothing else. Baked and baked again until every ghost of moisture is driven out of it. Because moisture is where rot lives, and a biscuit done right will keep for a year. It will also, done right, turn the edge of a hatchet. The first time you were handed one, you bit it like a fool. The whole compartment waiting for exactly that. And the laugh that went up made you shipmates with 40 people at once. You learn the ways of it soon enough. You soak it in your beer or your broth till it goes to a gray porridge, or you break it with a belaying pin and eat it in shards. Patient as a horse at a salt lick, and before any of that, you knock it. This is the ritual, and within a fortnight, it is as natural to you as grace before meat. Rations come up in the afternoon, and all down the deck, on hatch covers and chest lids, you hear it. Knock, knock, knock. Every soul aboard, wrapping their biscuits smartly against the wood, because flour draws weevils, little pale beetles, no bigger than a grain, and the bag has been 6 weeks from the bakehouse, and knocking the biscuit persuades the lodgers to move out before supper. Nobody is disgusted. That is the part you could never have explained to yourself back in the village. It is simply the custom of the country you live in now, and the children make a game of it, counting their evictions. And the old knitting woman examines her biscuit over her spectacles like a magistrate and pronounces the same verdict every day. More meat in the bread than in the pot. And every day it gets its laugh. The pot. Now, twice a day the cook's great copper serves out the warm meals, and the backbone of them is meat put up in salt. Beef or pork, packed in barrels in England, strong enough to outlast the ocean. Out of the barrel it comes stiff as harness leather and salt clean through. Salt enough to make a man gasp. And so it goes over the side first. This astonished you the first time you saw it. A net bag of the ship's own supper, towed in the sea like a fisherman's catch kept fresh. But the ocean is the cook's kitchen boy, and a few hours of towing washes the fierce brine out. And then into the copper it goes with dried peas and biscuit crumb and whatever the cook's mood allows, and comes out a thick gray stew that would win no prizes at any fair in England, and that you will eat, week upon week, with genuine and growing gladness. Hunger is the finest sauce, the cook says, and the sea air keeps hunger polished. Around the edges of the salt meat there are the smaller comforts. Cheese, hard as the biscuit by week 3, shaved with a knife like a carpenter dressing a plank. Dried saltfish on the days the meat does not serve. Oatmeal boiled to a porridge called burgoo, a little butter early on, while it lasts sweet, and dried fruit, if a family thought to bring their own, and the wise ones did. The goat gives her pint for the captain and for the small children, and there are eggs, now and again, doled out by the cook with the gravity of a man handing out pearls. And then there is what you drink. And here we come to the true accounting of a voyage, the arithmetic that rules everything. And it is time you understood the barrels down in the dark below your feet. For the first weeks, you drink beer, small beer, weak as a summer rain, brewed for keeping, and every soul aboard has a daily allowance of it. And this is wisdom old as ships, because beer has been boiled in the brewing, and it keeps its health long after plain water has lost its own. So the beer is drunk first, cask by cask, while the water waits in the dark, and every empty beer cask is a little notch cut in the calendar of the voyage. Then, somewhere in the 4th week, the beer's done, and the ship goes over to water, and the whole feel of the voyage quietly changes. The water was sweet Thames water when it went into the casks, and it has been lying in oak in a dark hold ever since. And fresh water in a barrel is a living thing, and it does not lie quiet. Along in the 3rd or 4th week it turns sulky. You dip your can, and the smell rises to meet you, green and eggy and stale, water gone stagnant in its own keeping. And the first time it happens, a murmur of real alarm runs through the passenger quarters, because a landsman's nose says spoiled, and spoiled water on a ship in the middle of an ocean is a thought with cold hands. It is Hale, of course, who settles it, the way he settles most things, by being unimpressed. He dips a can of the offending water, sniffs it like a farmer sniffing rain, and drinks it down. Let it stand open an hour, and the smell walks off, he says. And it does. Mostly, a splash of vinegar mends its manners, he says. And it does. And then he tells you the thing that not one passenger in 100 would believe if a landsman said it. And every deep-water sailor knows, for plain fact, water in cask sickens twice and mends itself twice. He says, she will smell foul this week, and come sweet again in a fortnight, and turn again later, and mend again. Nobody knows the why of it. The sea has her seasons, and so does the barrel. The trick is not to be afraid of her while she sulks. So you learn to drink your water the way you learn to eat your biscuit, with patience and small ceremony. Let it breathe. Cut it with vinegar. Take it in sips like a wilted plant being watered, and you learn what every soul on a long crossing learns, which is to think of water the way you once thought of money. There is so much in the purse, and no more coming, and the purse must last to Virginia. The steward serves out the ration at the scuttled cask each day. So much to each soul, small children first, and the line that forms there cans and pannikins in hand, becomes the truest clock aboard. Not the bells, not the sun, the waterline. You stand in it every day of your life now. And every day it tells you, in the level of the cask, and the count of the casks behind it, exactly how far you are from anywhere. One evening in the 5th week, standing in that line at dusk, you hear the steward tell the cook, lo, that another cask broached that morning had gone sweet as a well, the mending right on time, just as Hale promised. And you take your ration and drink it slow, and it tastes of oak, and faintly of vinegar, and of nothing at all. And it is delicious. And you think, near enough. The bread is near enough bread. The water is near enough sweet. The reckoning is near enough true. And the whole brave business of crossing an ocean in 1715 turns out to be built, plunk by plunk, on the art of near enough. Mind it well. You hand back your can. The evening bell rings. 2 strokes, and 2, and away forward. A voice answers it across the dark. All's well. Near enough. All's well. Every ship carries a boy, and this one carries Toby. He is 12 years old, born in Rotherhithe, within smell of the shipyards. And this is his 4th crossing, which he will tell you inside the first minute of any conversation, because it is the finest fact he owns. He is the ship's boy, which means he belongs to everyone and no one. Runs errands for the cook and the carpenter and the mates. Climbs where grown men send him because he weighs nothing and fears less. And stands his trick at the glass on the night watches, turning the sand and striking the bell, because timekeeping is a boy's duty on a merchant ship. Old custom, and Toby keeps it proudly. You have come to know him the way you come to know anyone aboard, which is to say, completely and by accident. He has decided you are worth educating, being farm-raised and therefore pitiable, and he has appointed himself your professor of all things salt. It was Toby who taught you which ropes a passenger may touch, and which will get your ears boxed. Toby who showed you how to sling a hammock so it does not spill you at the change of the watch. Toby who explained, with enormous scorn, that the ropes are never called ropes. They are lines and halyards and sheets, and a man who says ropes might as well wear a sign saying farmer. And it is Toby, in the 6th week, who falls. It happens on an afternoon of fresh wind and lumpy sea, when the mate calls for hands to shorten sail before evening. Toby goes up the ratlines the way he always goes, quick as a squirrel, and showing off by half. And a roll of the ship and a wet foot rope come together at the wrong moment, and he comes down the last 10 feet with no say in the matter, and fetches up against the bulwark, with his right hand bent wrong beneath him. The whole deck hears him land. What the whole deck does next tells you everything about the place you now live. Nobody screams. Nobody crowds. The nearest sailor is kneeling over him before the sound has died, running hands along the arm. And the word goes, aft, calm, as a bucket passed hand to hand. Boy is down. Wrist is hurt? Send for the carpenter. And the carpenter comes, because on a ship without a surgeon, the carpenter is the closest thing. Bones and planks being cousins in his philosophy. The verdict, when it comes, is good news wearing a splint. The wrist is not broken. The carpenter judges, but badly wrenched, hot and swelling fast. And he binds it flat to a strip of wood and rigs a sling, and pronounces sentence. No climbing, no hauling, no bell duty, nothing at all for that hand until it cools and knits. Weeks, maybe. Toby takes the sentence like a soldier, white around the mouth, and cries a little that night in his hammock where he thinks nobody hears, because he is 12, and the ship is his whole pride, and a boy with one arm is a passenger, and he would rather be dead than a passenger. But the ship has a problem now, and it is a real one, and it is this. The glass must still be turned. Understand what that little frame of sand truly is. Because by now you do, even if you could not put it into words until Hale puts it there for you. The ship is a clock with no clock in her, the sand glass at the helm, running its half hour, turned the moment it empties. 8 turnings to a watch is the only timepiece the reckoning has. The log line that measures her speed is timed by sand. The changes of the watch are called by sand. The master's book, the chart, the daily guess at where in 3,000 miles of water this little wooden village actually stands. All of it is built on those turnings, and a glass left lying empty. 10 minutes, 20, while nobody notices, is not a small sin. It is the ship losing her place on the earth. A crew works watch and watch, 4 hours on and 4 off, and there is no man to spare. And the man at the helm has the helm. The mates put their heads together at the change of the watch that evening, and you happen to be standing near, coiling down a line Toby would have coiled, and you hear Hale say it, not even looking your way. The farmer keeps good hours, he says. He is on deck at every change of watch, whether his sleep needs it or not. He stands straight. He is civil, and he watches that glass like it owes him rent. And the mate looks at you, and you feel the look the way you feel sun come around a sail. And that is how it happens. No ceremony, no speech. The mate walks over and asks your name, which he knows perfectly well, and asks if you can count to 8, which is a joke, and says, you will stand by the glass on the night watches until the boy's wrist mends. Turn her sharp, strike the bell. True, and God help you if I find sand lying dead in the bottom of her. That is the whole investiture. But when the mate has gone forward, Hale comes aft, and what he does means more. He takes the glass out of its frame, the actual glass. 2 bulbs of blown crystal in a little cage of turned wood. Older than you, older maybe than Hale, and he sets it in your 2 hands the way you would hand a man a lantern in a hay barn, and he gives you the law of it, quiet and complete. Sand runs half an hour, he says. The instant she is empty, you turn her, not a breath later. For every breath you dawdle is a lie written into the master's book. At each turning, you strike the bell. 1 stroke for the first turning, 2 for the second, so on to 8. And at 8 bells, the watch is done, and the next watch is called, and you begin again at 1, The strokes go in pairs. He says, ding ding, ding ding, and a single at the last if the count is odd. So a sleeping sailor can count them without waking all the way. And if ever you are unsure whether she has run out, she has, and you have been dreaming, and you will say so, out loud, to the officer of the watch, because a kept mistake is a spoiled reckoning, and an owned one is Tuesday. Do you have it? You have it. And then he tells you the last part. And this is Hale, paying you the only kind of compliment he keeps in stock, which is the truth. Any fool can turn a glass. He says, what I need is a man who understands what he is holding. Yonder in the master's cabin is a chart, and on that chart is a little pricked line of where this ship has been, day upon day. And the end of that line is us. Tonight, here. Nobody in creation knows where the end of that line sits but us. And we only know it by course, and speed, and time. He taps the glass in your hands. Once, gently. Course is the helmsman's charge. Speed is the log's. Time is yours. From tonight, farmer, you hold 1/3 of the ship's place in the world in your 2 hands. Hold it like it matters, because it does. He goes forward and leaves you standing at the rail with the glass in your hands and the dusk coming down. And you stand there a long moment, and you think of your father's watch chain, the one he never owned, and of the church clock at home that kept the whole parish, and of the £6 you did not have, and of the strange road by which a man with nothing comes to be handed, in the middle of an ocean, the keeping of time itself. Toby finds you at the rail. His arm is slung, his eyes are red, and he has come, 12 years old and heartbroken, to do the decent thing, because the glass was his and now it is yours, and a lesser boy would hate you for it. You will want to whistle to keep awake in the middle watch, he says, gruff as he can manage. Do not whistle. Whistling calls up wind. Hum, if you must. And the bell lanyard has a fray in it 2 spans up. Mind you, swing from below the fray. And, he adds, examining the horizon like a commodore, I shall check your count from my hammock. So strike true. You tell him you would expect nothing less from a 4-crossing man. He nods, satisfied, honor squared away on both sides, and goes below one armed to his supper. And that night, a little before midnight, you climb the ladder to take the glass for the first time, and the middle watch of the North Atlantic lies ahead of you, black and enormous, and yours. Midnight to 4 in the morning. Sailors call it the middle watch, and they call the man who loves it mad. And by the end of this night, you will be, quietly and forever, that kind of mad. You come up the ladder as the last bell of the evening watch dies away, and the deck you step onto is a different country from the one that exists by day. There is no lantern burning anywhere in her length but one, the little hooded lamp in the binnacle by the helm, trimmed low, throwing its small warm circle on the compass card, and nothing else, because a ship at night guards her darkness the way she guards her fire. Eyes ruined by lamplight cannot read the sea, and the sea must be read all night long. The watch changes around you in murmurs and bare feet. Men you cannot see, Hand off the ship to men you cannot see. Course and canvas and weather passed along in a few words each. The helm relieved, the lookout relieved. And then the off-watch pours itself down the hatches like water finding a drain. And the deck empties to its night company. The helmsman, planted easy with a spoke in each hand. The mate of the watch, a shadow by the weather rail, a lookout forward in the bows. You at your glass, 4 souls, holding a village, the sand is already running. Handed over midstream from the last watch. You set your feet, you find the rhythm of hair roll, and you begin your new trade, which is a strange one, because it is made almost entirely of nothing. You watch sand fall in the dark. That is the office. Half an hour of falling sand, a turn, a bell, and again. And the art of it, you discover inside the first hour, is what you do with your ears, while your eyes keep their one small appointment, because the ship talks all night. And the middle watch is when you finally hear her whole vocabulary, under everything, steady as your own pulse, is the water sound, the long wet seam of it running down her side from bow to stern. And you learn that it has mood, brisk and hissing when the breeze freshens, a lazy chuckle when it slacks. The helmsman steers by the compass, but he listens to that seam the whole while. And by the second hour, you understand why. Because you can hear the ship's speed change before you could ever see it. The whole night, shaped like sound, above you. The rigging plays on itself. And no two lines speak alike. There is a creak aloft that repeats with every roll, patient as a rocking chair. Some block swinging against the mast, and a low, steady thrum where the wind crosses the tight stays, almost too deep to hear, more in your chest than your ears. When the breeze shifts a point, the whole choir changes key at once, and the mate's shadow at the rail lifts its head before the compass card has moved, and calls a quiet word to the helm, and the ship comes back to her course, and the choir settles. Nobody taught you this language, and nobody needs to. Stand in the dark long enough with nothing to do but listen, and it teaches itself, the way the sounds of your father's barn taught themselves. Which beam spoke in a north wind, which door in a south one. The sand runs out. You turn her sharp the way you were charged, and you take the lanyard and strike your first bell ever struck at sea. One single stroke, and it goes out over the black water round and true, and from the bow, after a moment, the lookout's voice comes back down the wind, unhurried, half a song, all's well, and something happens in your chest that you will never fully explain to anyone. That call has been answering the ship's bell all voyage, every half hour, day and night, and you have heard it 100 times and slept through it 500 more. But this is the first one that has ever answered you. Your hand, your bell, and out of the dark, a man's voice saying, in 2 words, the whole creed of the night watch, someone is awake, someone is watching, all of you sleeping. Sleep on. The watch settles into its long middle. The moon is down, and the sky comes all the way out. And friend, there are no words fit for issue on the stars of the mid-Atlantic in 1715. There is no town on earth to dim them for 1,000 miles in any direction. And they go down to the sea on every side. Whole constellations you have known all your life, standing with their feet in the water, and the great soft river of the Milky Way running fore and aft, as if the master had trimmed the ship to sail along it. You stand your trick under all of that, turning your glass, and you watch the whole sky wheel slowly westward around its one nailed star, the North Star, the sailor's star, hanging steady off the starboard beam all night like a riding light on the world. The helmsman is not a talker, and the middle watch is not for talk. But around 3 bells he says, without turning his head, "Mind, she does not gain on you." And you look sharp at your glass, but the sand is running true. And then you see the shape of the joke arriving, slow as a tide. The stars gain on you. He means, watch them too long, and you forget the sand. Every green hand feeds the fish or loses the count. One or the other. His first middle watch. You have kept your supper and your count both. So far, he allows. High praise. You stand a little straighter at your post. Somewhere, in the small hours, the cold comes. The deep sea cold that lives out here, even in June, rising off the water into the middle of the night. And you learn the watchkeeper's hunch. Shoulders up, hands in your armpits between turnings. Feet learning to sleep in shifts while the man above them stays awake. The lookout is relieved at 4 bells, and the new man settles forward, and the ship sails on into the black, and the sand falls and falls, and you turn and strike, and the voice comes back. All's well, and between the bells there is nothing at all, nothing but water and starlight and 70 paces of wood carrying 80 sleeping souls across the dark side of the earth. And you would not trade your post for the captain's own cot, because here is what the middle watch gives you, and it is yours now for life. All your days you have been one of the sleepers, every night of your life. In the village, in the loft over the byre, you slept because somewhere beyond your knowing the watch was being kept by mothers, by shepherds, by the turning stars, by God. Tonight, for the first time in your 20 years, you are the one awake. The whole weight of all that sleep below decks, the children, the knitting woman, the stonemason snoring like a sawpit, Toby with his slung wrist. All of it rests on 4 souls in the dark, and one of them is you. And the weight does not feel like weight at all. It feels like the opposite. You could not have said, before tonight, that being trusted is a lighter feeling than being safe. Now you know. Toward the end of the watch, a step you know comes up the ladder, unhurried, and Hale's shape materializes at the rail beside you. He has come up early, the way old sailors do, sleep being a habit they wore out years ago. He checks the compass over the helmsman's shoulder with one glance, checks the set of the topsails against the stars, checks you, standing your post with the glass running low and your eye on it. He says nothing for a long while. The sand runs out. You turn her sharp and strike 7 bells. Ding, 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 and the pairs go out clean over the water, and the call comes back from forward, and the last half hour of your first watch begins to fall, grain by grain, through the narrow waist of the glass. Good hours, farmer, Hale says at last, to the sea more than to you. The words a master gives a ploughman whose furrows run straight. He stands beside you without another syllable until 8 bells. And that silence, you understand, is the certificate. The watch below comes up yawning. You hand the glass to your relief midstream. Sand still falling. The way it was handed to you. The way it has been handed. Man to man. Across every dark ocean since men first went out on them. Then you go down the ladder into the warm, breathing dark of the sleeping compartment, and you roll into your berth with your boots off and your eyes full of stars. And the last thing you hear before sleep takes you is your own bell, rung now by another hand. On a stroke, far away through the wood, and the voice, fainter still, faithful as sunrise, all's well. Somewhere in the 7th week, a strange thing happens to time, and it happens to every soul aboard, and nobody notices it happening, because that is the nature of the thing. The calendar dissolved ashore. Your days had names. Market day, washing day, the Sabbath, quarter day coming with the rent. Out here, the names have quietly starved for lack of work to do. One morning you hear the stonemason ask the carpenter whether it is Tuesday or Wednesday, and the carpenter thinks about it, genuinely thinks, and then says, "It is the day after yesterday," and goes back to his plane. And the terrible thing is that this answer satisfies everyone present, including you. What is left when the calendar goes is the ship's own time, and the ship's time is a wheel. Bells and watches, breakfast and supper, the water line at the scuttled cask, morning and evening, sun up on the starboard quarter, sun down over the bow, and the sand falling all night through your own 2 hands, around and around, and every day the same. And here's what I want to tell you about those weeks in the middle of the ocean, because it is the thing the old sailors know, and almost nobody ashore will ever believe. The sameness is not empty. The sameness is where the living gets done. Take 1 day out of that 7th week and walk through it. Any day. This day. It begins for you at 4 in the morning when your watch ends, and you sleep like a stone until 8 bells calls the forenoon, and you come up into a morning of high white cloud with the ship rolling along steady on the larboard tack, and the first thing you see is laundry, the whole waist of the ship strung with it, shirts and clouts and baby linen flapping from lines rigged between the boats, because the mate has passed the word that today the rain butts are full enough for washing, and the women have fallen on the chance like a holiday. Washing day. The names come back when there is work to give them. Forward of the laundry, the sailmaker has a length of worn canvas spread across the deck, and he is teaching, whether he means to or not, because sailors cannot mend a thing without gathering boys. And this morning he has Toby, one armed and desperate to be useful, threading needles for him with his good hand, and 2 of the passenger children besides, solemn as apprentices, holding the cloth flat while the big crooked needle goes through and through. A sail is the ship's wing, the sailmaker is saying around the palm thimble, and a wing is mended before it is torn. Look here. And he shows them the place where the cloth has gone thin and soft as an old shirt, chafed by nothing but wind and days. And they patch it the way your mother patched the knees of your breeches, and for exactly the same reason. Aft of the laundry, the fishermen's committee is in session. 3 passengers and an off-watch sailor with hand lines over the rail. And this is no idleness, because yesterday the sea sent up a marvel, and today everyone wants another. Fish that fly. You did not believe it either, until you stood at the rail and watched a whole silver squadron of them burst out of the face of a swell and sail. Actually sail, on stiff, shining wings, the length of your hand, 40 yards, 50, before slipping back into the water like needles into cloth. Twice this week, one has misjudged in the dark and landed aboard, thumping onto the deck like a thrown slipper. And the cook fried the first one, and the second went to the sick old woman aft. And half the ship now walks the morning deck with one eye on the scuppers, hoping, and there, in that last sentence, is the shadow in the wheat. So let us look at it straight. The way this ship looks at everything, the old knitting woman is failing. Nothing sudden. The voyage is simply long, and she is simply old. And somewhere in the 6th week, the 2 facts met. She keeps her berth now, propped so she can see down the length of the compartment, and her needles have gone quiet in her lap. And this is how you learn what a village at sea does when one of its own begins to sink. It closes around her like water around a stone, smooth and total, and without one word of organization. The wives take her nursing in turns nobody assigned. The goat's pint finds its way aft to her more evenings than not. And the captain, who is owed that milk, has developed a convenient blindness that nobody thanks him for out loud, because thanking him would make it a thing that was happening, and the ship prefers mercy to travel quiet. Her corner of the compartment, which was always the parlor of the whole company, remains the parlor. People bring their mending and sit by her. The children are not shooed away. They are sent over. A baby is set in the crook of her arm of an afternoon because her hands know what to do with a baby, whether they can knit or not. And the little girl of 7 reads to her, slow and fierce, from the only book the family owns. You take your own turn one afternoon, sitting on a chest beside her berth, and she studies you a long while with eyes that are still sharp as her needles ever were. And then she gives you her verdict. You came aboard a chick, she says, and look at you, bell ringer, keeper of the sand. She reaches out and pats your wrist. Once, my man kept time for a mill, 40 years. She says, good trade. Time. Everybody needs it, and nobody can make it. Then she is tired, and you sit with her while she sleeps, and the compartment murmurs around you both, and her needles lie crossed in her lap like something resting, and you understand that you are not sitting a death watch. You are sitting what this ship does instead of one, which is company. That evening after supper comes the hour that has become the crown of these middle ocean days, the hour that no one planned and no one would now surrender. When the cooking fire is banked and the lanterns are few and the whole company gathers in the waist under the first stars for what Toby grandly calls the entertainments. It is nothing. It is everything. A sailor with a fiddle wants tuning half the evening and plays like an angel the other half. The stonemason has a store of stories about cathedral builders, men walking scaffolds in the sky with the same cool blood as topmen on a yard. And the sailors respect these stories professionally and trade him back their own. There are riddles the children already know the answers to and demand anyway. And always, late, when the fiddle has gone soft, somebody asks for Virginia, and the letter comes out again. The famous letter, soft as cloth at its creases, and is read aloud to people who could recite it. Tell my brothers, there is room here, and the words go out over the dark water toward the place they came from. And the whole company sits quiet a moment, feeling the ship carry them toward it at a walking pace, mile upon mile, while the sand falls. That night on your watch, turning the glass under the wheeling stars, you try to reckon what day of the month it is, and you find you cannot, and you find you do not mind, and you stand there a long while examining this new man who does not mind, because the man who signed his name at Gravesend counted everything, pennies and miles and years, 4 years, the number that was going to sit on his chest all the way across this ocean, and it does not. That is the discovery you make somewhere in the middle of the middle watch, with the sand falling and the sea breathing and the whole sleeping village in your keeping. The paper in your chest has not crossed your mind in a fortnight. Out here there is no Virginia yet, and no England any more. No rent, no wages, no term of service, no debt that can be called in. There is only the wheel of the watches and the work of your hands and the company of these people, and a man who is needed every single night is a strange thing for a poor man to be, and you have become it without noticing. Somewhere out here, in the sameness where the living gets done, 8 bells. You strike them clean, hand off the glass, and go below past the old woman's corner, where a lamp is kept burning low, now all night by common consent, the ship's one extra flame, and her breathing is slow, and even in the little light, all is well. Near enough, all is well. The sea gives you 1 day of warning, and the old hands read it like print. It comes on a morning too beautiful to trust. The sky rinsed clean, the air soft, and a swell rolling up from the southwest that has nothing to do with the light breeze that is blowing. Long, slow hills of water with a 1/4 mile between them, lifting the ship and setting her down again, gentle and enormous, and arriving from somewhere the weather has not told you about yet. Hale stands at the rail, watching them come on, and does not like them, and says so in his own tongue, which is orders. Down come the light sails, double lashings on the boats and the spare spars. The carpenter goes around the deck with his mallet, setting wedges tighter, and the cook is told to serve the hot meal at noon instead of evening, and cook double, because there will be no fire lit tomorrow. By afternoon, the southwest sky has grown a bank of cloud with a hard pewter edge, and the swell has shortened its stride, and the wind begins backing and filling, goste, undecided, like something pacing. The passengers are gathered in the waist after the noon meal and told, plainly and without fright, what is coming, and what is asked of them. Wind, the mate says. Likely a full gale of it. Likely a day and a night of it. Everything loose in the compartment to be stowed and lashed. Every one below when the word is passed. Hatches will be secured. Lanterns doused. No flame below decks, whatever happens. None. It will be loud, he says, and it will be long, and it will be over. This ship has seen 10 of these for every one you will ever see. Look after your children, and let the crew look after her. And then, because he is a fair man, he says the sentence that you will hear repeated in the dark many times in the night to come. Noise is not danger, he says. A ship cries out under strain, like a man carrying a load. It is the quiet ship that is in trouble. The wind comes up with the dusk, and the passengers go below, and the hatch is drawn over, and the world becomes sound. You are berthed in the middle of 40 people lying braced in the dark, and I will not pretend to you that the first hours are anything but hard. The motion grows all evening, from rolling to plunging, the bow climbing hills you cannot see, and dropping into valleys you cannot judge. And every drop ends in a shock that comes up through the timbers into your spine. And the noise is a world entire. The wind in the rigging has stopped being a choir and become one single note. A long gray howl that never breathes. Water comes aboard above you, whole seas of it by the sound, landing on the deck planks like a giant slap and sluicing away down the scuppers. And below, all around you, in the dark, the ship works. And works is the carpenter's own word for it. The whole huge basket of her, flexing as the seas wring her, and every joint of her groaning, timbers crying out one against another, a sound like a forest in a storm. If the forest was 6 inches from your ear, in that dark, fear moves around the compartment like a draft, and it feeds on one thing above all others, and that thing is not knowing. A crash overhead, and 40 minds ask silently, was that the mast? A shudder through the hull, and 40 minds ask, have we struck? The little girl is crying, quietly, the way children cry when they are being brave about it, and her father is holding her and has nothing to tell her because he does not know either. And here, friend, in the black middle of that bad night, you discover the last thing the voyage has made of you. And it is the best thing, and you did not see it coming. You know these sounds. 7 weeks of night watches have taught you this ship's whole voice. And the storm is speaking no language you have not heard, only louder. That crash overhead that made the whole compartment gasp. You know it. It is the fore topsail being fought down onto its yard, canvas thundering as the men gather it. You have heard that thunder on easy nights, when sail was shortened for a squall. It is the sound of the crew doing exactly what they mean to do, that rhythmic groan down the length of her. You know it. The mainmast working in its step. The carpenter walks past it every day and pats it like a horse. That shudder is her shoulder taking a sea. And listen. Listen now. She rises after it. Every single time she rises. And the water roars away overboard. Off her. Not into her. So you begin, quietly, in the dark. To translate, that is sail coming in. You say, to the dark in general, keeping your voice down at the level of ordinary furniture. They are trimming her down snug. That thumping is the pump. And mark it. It is the same slow stroke as every morning. They are keeping her dry on the regular watch. No more. If there were trouble, the stroke would be double. A wave lands like a wagon load of stone, and before the gasp can spread, you say, deck seas. She sheds them. Here the scuppers run, and the scuppers run, loud and faithful, and the dark breathes out. It is the smallest ministry in the world. A farm boy naming noises, but not knowing, is the storm inside the storm. And one calm voice with the names of things is shelter. And slowly, hour by hour, the compartment gathers itself around that shelter. The stonemason takes it up with you, adding his builder's sense. Feel her. She works and comes back. Works and comes back. A thing that bends is a thing that is not breaking. The wives pass the children along to lie together in the middle berths, a warm heap of them like puppies, seasick and asleep by turn. And the old knitting woman, propped in her corner with the one lamp long since doused, says into a lull, in a voice dry as tinder, in my day, storms were storms. This is a breeze with opinions, and the laugh that runs down the compartment in the dark is worth more than bread. Past the middle of the night, the hatch slides, and a shape drops through in streaming oilskins, with a rush of wind and spray behind it. And it is hail. Come below to see the passengers, which he does at the worst of every blow, because that is what a bosun is. He finds you braced against your berth, still naming the sounds, and he crouches, streaming, and puts his mouth near your ear. And what he says is this: Boy is fretting himself sick that the glass is standing dead. He says, wants somebody at it. Officer of the watch wants the bell kept too. Storm or none, the watches must change on time. Men's strength is rationed by that bell tonight. Will you come up? Will you come up? 4 words, and every one of them weighs 100 weight, because up is where the howl lives, and you go, because the sand is yours. What you see in your 1 minute crossing the deck you will keep for life. The world stripped to gray and black, the sea gone white-haired. Enormous shapes rising and traveling and gone, spray going by flat as musket fire. And in the middle of it, the crew moving, bent double, clipped to lifelines, rigged fore and aft. 3 men on the helm now instead of 1, and all of them working with the unhurried economy of harvest hands ahead of rain. No shouting except the wind, no waste, no fear that shows. Just the next handhold and the next task. You always wondered what sailors were for. Toby had said once, grandly, 4 crossings deep. They are for this. They lash you to the mizzen fife rail with 2 turns of line, and arms reach from the glass in its frame, and there you stand your storm watch, drenched to the skin and holding your post, and when the sand runs out, you turn her with numb fingers, and you haul the lanyard, and the bell goes out into the gale. 2 strokes, and 2, thin against the howl, but there, and from somewhere forward, shredded by the wind, but alive, comes the answering hail. And below decks, you know now, 40 braced and sleepless souls hear that faint pair of sounds through the planking and understand what it has always meant. The watch is kept, the ship is minded, all is well. Even now, especially now, the gale blows itself hoarse in the gray of morning, backing slowly into the northwest and easing point by point. The seas grown old and long, the ship still rising to them, tired and sound. The cost is counted in daylight, and there is a cost. The mate never promised otherwise. The fore topsail blew out of its gaskets in the worst hour and is gone to ribbons. The sailmaker, already sitting cross-legged on the wet deck with its replacement across his knees. One sailor's shoulder was wrenched near out of its socket by a running line, and he wears his arms slung alongside Toby now. The two of them, a matched pair of invalids, deeply proud, and the carpenter comes up from the hold with the morning's hard news. 3 of the water casks, stove or brine, spoiled where a tear shifted. 3 casks of sweet water gone to the bilge. And his face, as he reports it, tells you. This arithmetic will follow the ship all the way to the Chesapeake, but she swims, and her people are whole, and the wind that remains is fair from the northwest, driving her west at the best pace of the whole crossing, as if the storm were embarrassed and making amends. You come off your watch soaked and shaking and empty, and before you go below, you stop at the glass, where Toby has hauled himself up one-armed to inspect the state of things. The sand is falling, steady and dry in its little crystal room. The one thing aboard the Storm never touched, never stopped. Did she? Toby says. Never stopped. You say? He nods. Once, like a commodore accepting a report, and the two of you stand there a moment in the ragged silver morning, either side of the falling sand, while the ship runs west with her wounds and her whole company toward Virginia. 2 mornings after the gale, with the ship running large before a kindly northwest wind, and the whole company on deck drying bedding in the sun, the lookout's voice comes down from the masthead with a word that stops every hand on the ship at whatever it is doing. Sail. 1 word, and the deck goes still, and you feel the stillness travel down through the hatches into the ship like something poured. Sail ho. The lookout calls again, and then the bearing. 2 points off the larboard bow, and every eye aboard goes to that piece of horizon, where, when the ship lifts on a swell, there is now a fleck of white that is not a wave, small as a fingernail, sitting on the very seam between sea and sky. You have not seen another made thing in 5 weeks. Not a ship, not a plank, not a rooftop, nothing shaped by hands in 5 weeks of water. And your first feeling, before any thinking gets done, is a leap of pure gladness, the gladness of a man alone on a moor, spotting a far figure on the road. People, out here. Your second feeling arrives when you see the officers' faces, and it corrects the first, because out here, in 1715, a strange sail is a question, and the question is not answered until she is close enough that the answer matters. The captain is on deck within a minute, glass to his eye, braced against the mizzen shrouds, and he stays there a long time. The mates gather near him, and there is low talk, and you are close enough, coiling down by the helm, to hear the shape of it. She is ship-rigged. They judge, bigger than us. She stands on toward the northeast, crossing our track astern, bound home for Europe most likely, or standing toward us, too far to tell her nation, too far to tell her trade. And a merchant brig deep loaded with cloth and iron, and 80 souls does not have the luxury of assuming the best. Nobody says the word. That is the thing you notice. Nobody aboard says pirate. Not the officers, not the sailors. And they're not saying it. Stands in the middle of the deck like a post. The war with France and Spain ended 2 years back, and the sea is full of hard men that peace threw out of work. Privateers, with no commission left and no trade learned, but taking ships, and every foremast hand aboard knows it, and not one of them wastes breath on it. What they do instead is work quietly, without any order, given that you can hear. The ship begins to gather herself. The best suit of sails is already bent. The gale saw to that. Hands go aloft and shake out the reefs. The captain alters course. Easy, unhurried. A point and then another point away. The move of a man crossing a dark common, who angles wide of a stranger. No insult offered. Sea room taken, and the passengers are sent below. It is done gently. The mate passing along the waist. Families, down now, if you please. Keep the little ones off the deck a while. And the compartment fills up in the middle of a sunny forenoon, and the hatch stays open, which everyone understands to be a good sign, and the talk runs low and quick. And here is where you learn something about rumor that you will remember long after you have forgotten the fear. Rumor moves faster below decks than wind moves above. Within the half hour, in a wooden room where nobody can see anything, the strange sail has been every ship on the ocean. She is a Spaniard. She is a Salé rover, clean from Africa. She is Captain Somebody, whose name a man from Wapping heard in a tavern once, who took a ship off the Downs and set her people adrift in the boats. She grows guns with every telling, and it is the old knitting woman, propped in her corner, who finally takes the wheel of the conversation, in the voice she probably once used on a kitchen full of daughters. She is a ship, the old woman says, until God and daylight say different, and there is washing yet to fold, and she sets the little girl to winding wool, and the compartment, ashamed of itself in the best way, goes back to its work with its ears cocked. You are not below. Your glass has watches to keep whatever the horizon does. And so you stand your post through that long, careful afternoon, and you watch the whole slow ceremony of 2 ships reading each other across 5 miles of open water. And it is slow. That is the truth the stories never tell. Not a chase, not a thunder of guns, but hours. Hours of 2 clouds of canvas leaning apart on a bright sea. The stranger hull up now, then hull down. The captain's glass going up and coming down. the helmsman easing her a spoke and steadying, and the sand falling through your glass. 3 turns. 4 turns. 5. The bell struck soft on the officer's quiet word. And you understand, standing there, that most of the danger in this world is passed exactly like this. Not fought, outwaited, given room, and watched until it becomes what it probably always was, which, at 4 bells of the afternoon watch, she does, the stranger, drawing slowly ahead and away on her northeast course, does the one thing no taker of ships would ever trouble to do. She dips her ensign, runs her colors down a fathom and up again, the old salute of merchantmen passing on the sea road, and the colors are English, and along her rail, tiny at this distance, you can make out figures waving. The captain lowers his glass, and for the first time in 6 hours his shoulders come down from around his ears. Answer her, he says, and our own ensign dips. And, just like that, the afternoon exhales, homeward bound tobacco ship. The mate judges, out of the Chesapeake for London, and the 2 ships pass on opposite roads a mile apart. Each one the first human thing the other has seen in weeks. And every soul allowed on deck stands at the rail and waves at strangers they will never meet, as warmly as if it were Christmas. And from across the water, thin on the wind, comes the sound of the other crew cheering. That evening, the entertainments in the waist are better attended than ever. Everyone hungry to be together after a day of being brave separately. And it is there, with the fiddle resting and the stars coming out, that one of the older sailors, a gray man called Dean, who has been in these trades 30 years, fills his pipe and tells the company the news. The homeward ship had shouted across the water as they passed. The news that is running up and down this whole ocean season like fire in stubble, and it is a story to make everyone pull their blankets closer. In the good way, the fireside way. The Spanish treasure fleet is on the bottom, Dean says. Last summer, he says, end of July, 11 tall ships out of Havana for Spain, deep with the silver of the Americas. Years of it, held back through all the late war, and sailing home at last, all together for safety. And off the coast of Florida, a storm came up out of the east, one of the great ones, the hurricanes, and took the whole fleet in a single night and laid it on the sand in the shallows. Ships, silver, and all, 1,000 men and more, went with them, he says. And the pipe glows and dim. And now, he says, every idle sloop and every hungry man from Port Royal to Providence is making sail for that stretch of coast. Divers and dreamers and worse, all of them fishing silver out of the surf, and the Spaniard soldiers standing guard over their own wrecks, and half the rough trade of the whole ocean drifting down to those shallows, the way wasps find a fallen pear. A wrecking ground, he says. A whole coast turned lottery. There will be trouble out of it for years. The company takes this in silence, in starlight. 3,000 miles of dark water lying between them and that glittering ruin, and it lands on you all not as fear but as wonder. The purest firelight story there is. Treasure and tempest. Far away, someone else's peril on someone else's sea. The little girl, who is allowed up late because the day was hard, asks the only question worth asking: whether the fish can see the silver lying on the sand. And Dean considers this with complete seriousness and says he expects the fish of Florida are the richest fish in creation. And she goes to bed satisfied. And honestly, so does everyone. On your watch that night, the sea is empty again to every horizon. And you find you look at it differently now. All this dark water, and somewhere off beyond the curve of the world, wrecks and silver, and watch fires on a foreign beach, and ships like your own threading between the stories, dipping their colors to strangers, taking sea room, keeping their bells. The ocean is not empty. You think it only looks empty. It is a road. And tonight, the road runs quiet. The sand runs out. You turn the glass and strike the hour. And the call comes back to you down the length of the ship. Easy and unhurried. The only answer the night requires: all's well. The morning after the strange sail, the captain does his arithmetic in the open. And this is a thing so unusual that the whole ship understands its meaning before a word is explained. He has the water casks surveyed at first light, the carpenter and the steward going down with lanterns and sounding rods, tier by tier, through the hold, and the tally chalked on a slate. And then, instead of keeping the slate in his cabin, which is any captain's right, he calls all hands and all passengers into the waist, crew to larboard, families to starboard, and he stands at the break of the quarter-deck with the slate in his hand and tells 80 people exactly how much water their world contains. The gale cost us 3 casks, he says. What remains is sound. But the song is shorter than the ocean is. From this morning, the ration is 2 quarts ahead each day. All souls alike. Until we raise the land, 2 quarts is thirst's edge in warm weather. He does not pretend otherwise. It is also enough, he says, plainly, enough to bring every soul aboard to Virginia, if it is minded, and minded it will be. Cooking water comes off the ration before it is served out. The animals come down to their own short allowance, and no washing in fresh water from this hour, which, he adds dryly, will grieve the fashionable among us worst. And he looks at Toby, whose relationship with soap is the ship's oldest joke, and the laugh that follows does exactly what he built it to do. It lets 80 people receive hard news standing up straight. Then he does the thing you will tell your grandchildren about. He has the steward serve out the first ration of the new order right there before the company. Every measure struck level at the lip of the pot, and the first measure poured is his own, and he drinks his quarts half down in front of all hands. The same water, the same portion, out of the same battered tin, and hands the can back and says, "Sweet enough, share and share alike, cabin to forecastle, carry on." And that, friend, is why there is no grumbling on this ship in the thirsty fortnight that follows. Not because sailors and farm folk are saints, they are not, but because scarcity is a weight, and a weight is carried easily or badly depending on one thing only: whether the load is trimmed fair. Every soul aboard watches the captain and the mates and the sailmaker and the cook stand in the same line at the same cask and take the same measure, day upon day. And something old and watchful in every heart lies back down and goes quiet. The load is trimmed fair. The rest is only thirst. Only thirst. Listen to me, saying only, it is real. I will not sing it away. 2 quarts is drinking water and nothing else. And the body notices by the 3rd day. Mouths stay a little dry, and the salt meat sits heavier, and the cook shifts the cooking toward burgoo and steeped biscuit, foods that carry their own moisture. And mothers water their children first out of their own measure, the oldest arithmetic on earth. And the afternoon sun gets a voice, and everyone learns to stay out of it, moving through the shady hours the way the whole world sensibly does in hot countries, and always did. But now watch what a village does with a shortage. Because this is the chapter I have been wanting to tell you, and it is the reason this crossing will stay in your bones as something other than an ordeal. Hale opens his school. The bosun has crossed on short water more times than he will number, and he goes about the deck those first days, planting his knowledge like seed, gruff and offhand, never once making a speech. He shows the children the trick of the button, a smooth pewter button or a clean pebble of ballast flint, rinsed and tucked in the cheek, and the mouth, fooled into thinking it has something to work on, waters itself, and stays comfortable through the long stretch between rations. Half the foremast hands are walking about with a cheekful of button by the 2nd day. So it becomes not a hardship remedy, but a fashion, and the little girl wears hers like a secret and shows every soul aboard, one at a time, swearing each to silence. He teaches the passengers to take the ration in sips spread across the day, never in one grateful flood. You water a wilted plant slow, he says, or it runs straight through and does the roots no good. And he has the awnings rigged wide over the waist, old sailcloth spread on the spare spars, so the deck grows a broad piece of shade where the compartment can live through the hot hours, and the ship goes about under her canvas roof like a fair come to rest on the water. The old knitting woman is carried up each day into that shade, berth blankets and all, by the stonemason and the sailmaker in turns, because below decks is stuffy in the heat, and the captain's new blindness has widened to include a deck chair made of 2 chests and a spare grating. She holds her little court there by the mainmast, wool in her lap for appearances, directing the ship's affairs with her eyebrows. And the goat, on her own short ration, still gives her faithful pint, and it goes around the sick and the small in a tin cup with the gravity of communion. And nobody in that whole thirsty village ever once suggests the old woman and the babies should take their chances with the common measure. I want you to notice that short water is famous for showing the worst in ship's companies. It is showing you this one's best. And the difference, you already know, was trimmed fair on the first morning, at the lip of a battered tin can. And then, in the 2nd week of the short ration, the sky remembers you. It comes up from the southward after noon, a dark blue curtain of rain, walking on the water, legs of it trailing from cloud to sea, and the cry goes through the ship the moment the lookout is sure of its road. Rain, rain, coming down the wind. And this time, The order that empties the deck is the merriest ever given aboard. All hands and all souls to catch water. Out come the awnings, slacked and belly down now, spread corner to corner into broad canvas cradles. Out come the empty casks, bungs open, the funnel the cooper made against this very hour. Out come pots, guns, kettles, the copper itself, every vessel in the ship that will hold a pint, ranked along the deck like an audience. The squall walks up the sea, and the first drops come fat and loud on the dry canvas. And then it is upon you. A warm, gray, roaring plenty. Fresh water falling free out of heaven onto a ship that has been counting it by the quart. And what happens on that deck is simply joy. There is no other honest word. The sailcloth cradles fill and are dipped and funneled off into the casks. Bucket brigades passing the wealth below. Hail calling the order of it. First run off over the side to rinse the salt from the cloth. Then every drop saved. The children are turned loose in it and go shrieking down the streaming deck. And then the grown folk give up dignity one by one. The stonemason, standing with his face turned up and his mouth open like a fledgling. The wives wringing the blessed nuisance out of everyone's clothes and laughing. Toby conducting the storm with his one good arm, and you stand at your glass with the rain hammering the deck around it and find you are laughing out loud at nothing. At water. At plain water. And the old woman under the shelter of the quarterdeck watches the whole drenched carnival with her hands folded and says, to nobody and everybody, that God sends the rain on the just and the unjust. But, she notes, he waited for the just to rig their awnings first. The squall gives you the better part of 2 hours and marches away north, trailing its silver legs. And the sounding rod tells the tale at evening. 4 casks caught. Near enough. The gale's debt paid back with interest. The ration eased a half measure from tomorrow. And the whole ship sleeps that night washed, rinsed, and rich. On your watch, late. Hale comes aft, as he does, and stands his silent while beside you. And tonight, rain sweet in the casks and the ship whispering along under an easy sky. He says one thing more than usual, and it is not about the rain. I have crossed on short water when it went otherwise. He says, when the sea kept some of the company before ever we raised the land, his pipe glows once, goes dim. This crossing she has kept none, he says. Old, young, sick, sound, every soul that sailed out of the Thames is aboard tonight. That is not owed to us, farmer, and it is not luck either. It is minding, and fair measure, and the rain when it mattered. And I have stood enough of these watches to know how rare the sum is. He knocks his pipe on the rail. Once, soft. So mind your sand, he says, and let them sleep. He goes forward. The sand runs out. You turn the glass and strike the bell into the wet, shining dark. And the answer comes back to you from the bow the way it always does. And tonight, you hear the whole of what it carries. Every soul aboard, still aboard, sleeping on rainwater and fair shares. 3 weeks from Virginia. All's well. In the 9th week, the ocean begins to send you letters. Nobody announces this. There is no morning when the ship crosses a line and the water becomes different water. It happens the way spring happens in a cold country. One small sign at a time, each one nothing on its own, until a morning comes when you stand at the rail and understand that the world has been quietly replaced around you, and the old hands have been reading the letters all along, and smiling over them, and saying nothing, because watching the passengers find out is one of the crossing's oldest entertainments. The first letter is written in weed. You notice it on a warm forenoon. A patch of gold on the blue, drifting past the ship's side. Then another, and by afternoon whole ropes and meadows of the stuff, berry brown and butter yellow, riding the swell in long windrows that stretch away toward the horizon like hayfields flooded by the sea. Gulfweed. Dean tells the rail full of passengers, come up from the southward. Whole seas of it lie that way. And he hooks a clump aboard with a boat hook so the children can see it close. It lies on the deck like something from a dream. Air berries that pop between small fingers, tiny crabs, the color of the weed itself scuttling through it, little fish hiding in it, a whole floating parish of creatures 1,000 miles from any shore, living their lives on a raft of weed. The little girl asks if it grew on the bottom and floated up, and Dean says, no, sweetheart, it grows nowhere at all. It just lives out here, unrooted, going where the water goes. And she looks at it a long time, and you can see her deciding whether that is a sad life or a free one, which is a question you have been turning over yourself these 4 years in your chest. The second letter has wings. It comes on a quiet evening, between the dog watches, when most of the company is on deck for the cool. Abit. And listen, you have seen birds all crossing, the great gray gliders that ride the wind off the wave tops for hours and never trouble the ship. This is not one of those. This is a small brown bird, a land bird, some cousin of the finches that raided your father's seed rows, and it comes in from the west, flying tired, and it lands on the mainstay above the deck, and grips, and sits there, breathing. The deck goes quiet the way a church goes quiet, because every soul aboard, farm folk all, knows exactly what they are looking at. That bird does not sleep on water. That bird sleeps in trees, and there is not a tree. You know it better than anyone aboard. There is not one tree in 3,000 miles behind you, which means the trees are ahead, and near enough that a small brown pair of wings can be blown out from among them and live to sit in your rigging. Nobody moves. Mothers hold their children still with a hand on the shoulder. The bird sits up there through the whole evening, turning its head, and toward dark, it drops down to the deck and helps itself to a scatter of crumbs the cook has put out, with a face that forbids anyone to mention it. And it roosts that night in the lee of the water casks, the most watched-over guest that ever sailed the Atlantic. In the morning, it is gone, away west before first light, home ahead of you, and the whole ship walks lighter all day, and nobody says why out loud, and everybody knows, and the third letter comes by night, on your watch, and it is written in fire. You have the middle watch, the sand falling, the ship running easy before a warm quartering breeze. And somewhere past 2 bells, you become aware of a light where no light should be. Below you, off the side, you lean out over the rail and look down, and the sea is burning. Along the ship's waterline, wherever her hull breaks the water, there runs a seam of pale green fire, cold and bright, clinging to her side, like the light off a low fire's coals. Her bow wave curls away in 2 long scrolls of glow, and astern, when you turn, her wake stretches back into the dark for a 1/4 mile. A road of soft light laid on the black water, churned brightest where the rudder works, fading at the far end like a memory letting go. Every dip of the sea against her planks strikes sparks, the crests breaking out in the dark to windward flare and die like green lightning lying down. You stand there, gripping the rail, and your first thought, honestly, is that you should wake somebody, the way you would for a fire in a barn, and the helmsman, who has been watching you discover it with the deep contentment of a man at a good play, says, "Sea light. She burns like that in the warm waters. Most nights from here on in, old men say it is the sea's own spirits. Learned men say it is small creatures in the water, little as dust, that shine when they are stirred, the way a firefly shines." He eases a spoke, steadies, whichever it is, he says. It means the water has gone warm and southern, and warm and southern is the water that washes Virginia. She is lighting your road, lad. And then he says, "Take a turn at the head pump line and see the wonder proper." And you haul a bucket of living light up onto the deck, an ordinary wooden bucket brimming with black water, and you stir it with your hand and it blazes. Green galaxies swirling around your fingers. Every drop that falls from your hand a falling star, and you stand on the deck of a ship in the middle of the night, in the middle of the ocean with a bucket full of cold fire, 20 years old, and you think, with a clarity that will never leave you, that no man in your parish, not the squire, not the parson, not one soul in that whole green county, has ever seen what you are seeing right now, and that whatever else your 4 years cost, the fare has been paid back tonight. In light, you stand your whole watch in that shining, striking your bells while the wake burns behind you, and the sand itself seems to fall brighter in the glass. The letters keep coming all that week. The blue of the water shifts, day by day, out of the black ink of the deep ocean toward something greener, softer, shallower in its very color. The swell changes its stride underfoot, shorter, busier. The step of water that knows the land is somewhere at its back. Dean hauls up a jellyfish of a kind he says never strays far from the coast, and pronounces it a Virginia creature entire, and the smell of the ship's own weed and tar and tallow begin, at moments, on the right slant of the western wind, to carry something threaded through it that is none of those things, something you cannot name yet, and lose again the moment you turn your face to find it. The master and the mates change too, and this you notice from your post at the glass. The noon sights are taken now with double care. 2 instruments, Two reckoners. Results compared. The pricked line on the chart in the cabin is creeping toward the western edge of its ocean, and everybody who serves the reckoning feels the change in weight. All the crossing long. A mistake of 30 miles in the guess meant nothing. Water being water. Now, somewhere ahead in the west, the water has an edge, and the edge has sandbars and shoals and a coast with no lighthouse on its whole length. And 30 miles wrong is the difference between finding a bay's mouth and finding its beach. Near enough is about to be examined, Hale says, and the whole afternoon watch is set to overhauling a piece of gear you have never yet seen used. Flaking a long line into a tub in careful loop, a line marked off its whole length, with scraps of leather and knots and strips of colored cloth, and at its end a bar of lead the size of your forearm, with a cup-shaped hollow in its base. You ask what it is, and Hale weighs it in one hand, looking west. Tomorrow or the day after, he says, we begin asking the bottom. There is a border around every land in the world, and it is not the shore. It lies far out at sea, invisible, under the water. And it is the place where the deep ocean floor begins its long, slow climb up toward the beach. Sailors in 1715 cannot see that border. They cannot mark it on the surface, but they know it is there. And they know that on the far side of it, the sea has a floor a ship's line can reach. And they have a word for crossing into that country. They call it coming into soundings. And the coming in of a ship into soundings, after a long ocean passage, is one of the quiet, holy moments of the old sea life. And you are about to stand in the middle of one. It begins as a duty and becomes a ceremony. Each forenoon now, and each evening, the ship is brought up into the wind, her way stopped, sails backed and shivering, and the deep sea lead goes over the side. This is the great line you watched them flake into its tub. 100 fathoms of it and more, and the cast of it takes half the watch working together. The line carried forward outside all the rigging. Men spaced along the rail, passing the coils. The heavy lead swung and let go from the bow, so the ship's remaining drift brings her up over the line as it sinks, and every man in the chain calling watch. There, watch, there, as the coils run out of his hands, one after another, down and down and down, and for 3 days, the ocean gives back the same answer. The line runs to its bitter end, 100 fathoms, and more of it, 600 feet of water, and the lead still swinging in the dark below, touching nothing, no bottom. The mate calls, and the line is hauled back aboard, dripping, arm over arm. All that wet length come home empty, and the ship fills away west again. No bottom, the deep sea saying, not yet, not yet. You feel the whole ship lean into that word. Yet, on the 4th morning, the cast goes differently, and you know it before anyone says a word, because you are watching the line where it runs out over the bow, and you see it happen. The coils are paying out. 10 fathoms, 20, 40, 60. The calls passing down the rail, and then the line. which has all this crossing pulled hungrily down into the sea like something falling, goes soft, slack in the water, the pull gone out of it. The lead is lying down, somewhere below the ship, in the green dark. After 3,000 miles, the lead is lying on something. Bottom, the leadsman calls, and his voice cracks on it. Grown man, 20 years at sea, and the word goes down the deck like fire, down a train of powder. Bottom, by 70 fathoms. Bottom, and the passengers come boiling up the hatches half-dressed, because that word has been waited on below decks the way villages wait on church bells. And the whole company crowds the rail and stares at the flat, ordinary sea as if it had begun to speak. Which, friend, is exactly what it has done, but the depth is only half the message. And now comes the part you will tell forever. The lead is hauled back, 70 fathoms of line coming in wet and eager, hand over hand, down a rail of grinning men, and when the great bar of it breaks the surface and swings aboard, the mate does not look at the lead. He looks at its foot, at that cup shaped hollow in the base, which you wondered at, and which all this voyage has been packed with a plug of tallow, plain white grease, for one purpose only. Whatever floor of the world that lead lands on, the tallow takes a bite of it and brings it home. The mate scoops the plug out with his knife and holds in his palm a little gray-white smear of the bottom of the sea, phoenescent, pale as ash, with flecks of broken shell in it, tiny and bright. He rubs a pinch between finger and thumb, smells it, God's truth, smells it like a farmer smelling a handful of his own field, and passes it to the captain, and the captain works it in his fingers, and looks at nothing for a moment, at everything, at a chart that lives behind his eyes, fine white sand and shell. He says, "That is the bank off the Virginia Capes," or "I never sail." He closes his fist on it. Gently, gentlemen, we are on the coast of America. What happens next is not cheering, or not only cheering, it is stranger and better than cheering. The little smear of sand is not thrown to the deck. It is passed, hand to hand, down the whole length of the ship. Sailors first, and then passengers. Every soul aboard, taking a pinch of wet gray sand between finger and thumb, feeling the grit of it, some smelling it as the mate did, the stonemason rolling it on his palm like a man valuing mortar, mothers guiding their children's small fingers into it. This is it. Feel it. That is the bottom of the sea. And the bottom of the sea belongs to Virginia. The little girl will not surrender her pinch at all, and is finally allowed to fold it into a scrap of paper. The first American ground her family will ever own. And the old knitting woman, when it comes to her chair by the mainmast, takes her portion and holds it a long time, rubbing it slowly, her eyes shut, and what she says, so quietly that only the nearest hear it, and you are among them, is, well then, it is a real place after all, because that is the thing you understand, standing there with the grain still on your own fingers. For 9 weeks, Virginia has been a word, a letter read by firesides, a name on an indenture, a bearing on a compass, a promise sworn to by people who had never seen it either. Every soul aboard left everything on the strength of a word. And there have been nights, you know it, in the storm, in the thirst, when the word wore thin, when the ocean seemed to be all the world there was or ever would be. And now the land itself, still 100 miles off, still days away, invisible below the horizon, has reached out under 300 feet of water and touched the ship before any eye aboard has seen America. America has sent up a handful of itself, as if to say, I am here. Come on. The lead becomes the ship's whole religion after that, cast by cast, watch by watch. The water shoals, 70 fathoms, then 55, then 40. The line coming up shorter every time, like a story reaching its end. And each cast, the tallow brings up its news. Sand, then sand and black specks, then gray mud. And the captain and the mates read each sample against their memory and their written sailing directions, correcting the ship's road by the feel of the sea floor, steering 150 tons of oak and 80 souls by grease, grit, and 30 years of remembering. No bellboy, no light, no mark on all that coast, and the ship comes in anyway, feeling her way like a man crossing his own dark farmyard, sure-footed on ground he cannot see, because he knows it. And on your night watch, in the middle of all this, comes the moment that is yours alone. Middle watch again, the sand falling, the ship under easy sail, and the lead going every hour now. The water 40 fathoms under her and shoaling. You turn your glass and strike 4 bells, and the call comes back from forward. All's well, and you stand there in the dark, with your hand still on the lanyard, and it arrives in you, quiet as the tide, the thought you did not know you had been waiting for. That bell just rang in American waters. The sound of it went out over water that touches, without one break, the beaches of Virginia. Some far-spent ripple of it is traveling toward the rivers where your 4 years are waiting, toward the docks and the tobacco fields, and whatever face your master will have, toward the whole unknown country of the rest of your life. And the strange thing, the thing you will keep, is that the thought does not fall on you like a weight, the way it would have fallen at Gravesend. You have crossed an ocean since Gravesend. You have kept time through a gale, and shared thirst by fair measure, and held a bucket of cold fire in your 2 hands. And the man standing at this bell is not the man who signed that paper, though he owns his signature still and will honor it. Let the years come. You think, you have got sand from the bottom of their sea folded in a paper in your chest, same as the little girl. It is a real place after all. You will meet it standing up. The sand runs out. You turn the glass, easy and exact, an old hand's motion now, and away in the west, under the horizon, in the dark, America lies waiting, 2 days off, sending its floor up to meet you. The last night of the open sea begins like any other, and you will remember every hour of it for the rest of your life. The ship is under short sail, going gently, because the captain has no intention of finding this coast at night. The lead goes every hour, 20 fathoms now, then 18. The tallow bringing up sand and mud, the water shoaling so steadily that the master has the ship brought around at midnight to stand off and on, holding her distance, waiting on daylight, the way a wise traveler waits at the edge of a dark town rather than walk its lanes at midnight. The night is warm, the wind light out of the west, off the land itself, and half the passengers have brought their bedding up to sleep on deck under the awnings. As they have taken to doing these warm nights, families laid out in rows between the hatches, the whole village sleeping under the stars, one last time. You have the middle watch. Of course you do. You would not have traded it away for wages. And somewhere past 3 bells, with the sand falling and the ship rocking along, quiet as a cradle, it comes. You notice it the way you notice a change in a sleeping child's breathing, something below hearing, below naming. The wind has been the wind all crossing, and the wind smells of salt and weed and wet rope and nothing, the great clean, nothing of the open sea. And now, threaded through the nothing, faint as a memory of a memory, there is something. You lift your face into it. It comes and goes, comes again, a little fuller. It is green. That is the only word your mind can find at first. Something green is riding the wind. And then the wind steadies a point, and the something opens up. And it is not one smell. It is a whole world of them braided together. And your farm-raised nose begins pulling the braid apart with a kind of wonder that is close to weeping. Pine, that is the spine of it. Pine resin, the smell of a sun-warmed spar shed, but vast. A country of it, forests of pine breathing out their sap into the night. And under the pine, wet earth, soil, plain dark soil, after 9 weeks of brine, soil and leaf rot and green wood and marsh, and threaded through it all, so faint you have to stop breathing to catch it. Wood smoke, somebody's fire, somebody's hearth, banked for the night, on land you cannot see, in a country you have never touched, and the wind has carried it 50 miles out to sea and laid it on your face like a hand. America smells like pines and wood smoke. Nobody ever told you that. All the letters, all the firesides, all the talk of land and wages, and nobody ever said, you will smell the place in the dark, hours before you see it. It will come out to meet you. You are not the only one awake to it. Along the deck, among the sleeping rows, first one shape, and then another sits slowly up, silent, faces turning west like flowers, finding a window. The helmsman lifts his chin. The lookout forward stands out of his lean. Nobody speaks. And that is the wonder of it. The same wonder as every true moment of this crossing, that the biggest news arrives quietest. A woman wakes her husband with a hand on his chest and says nothing, only breathes in, deep, so he will do the same. The stonemason sits up in his blanket and takes one long breath through his nose, and lies back down with his eyes open to the stars, and folds his hands on his chest like a man in church. One by one, the whole deck wakes itself, wakes each other, gently, wordlessly, until 100 people are sitting in the dark on the deck of a small wooden ship at the edge of the new world, breathing in their new country before ever they lay eyes on it. Hale comes up the ladder, drawn by whatever draws him, and stands beside you at the glass, and takes the air in slow through his nose. One long professional draft, the way he sniffed the storm coming all those weeks ago. Pines of Virginia, he says, quiet, sweetest landfall smell in the Western Ocean. I have raised this coast 30 times, and it is 30 times that smell has beaten the lookout to it. He is silent a moment, and the wind moves over the sleeping, waking, breathing deck. The land reaches out. He says, first the bottom, under your keel, then the smell of her, on the wind. She takes hold of a ship slow and gentle. This coast, like a woman taking a man's arm. By noon tomorrow, you will see the trees themselves. The sand runs out. You turn the glass and strike the bell soft, and the lookout's answer comes back down the wind with the pine smell riding through it. And no bell you ever strike again will ring through a finer air. Dawn comes up behind the ship, over the ocean, the way it has come up behind you for 9 weeks. And this morning, for the first time, there is something in the west for it to land on. You see the trees before you see the land, which sounds impossible until you have seen it. A low dark line, lying on the horizon, dead ahead. Thin as a hair at first, not blue like cloud, but a warm, rough, green-brown, with a texture in it, a nap-like cloth. And the texture is forest, miles of it. The lookout sings out land ho with the sun's first light, and the word goes through the ship like a struck bell, and the deck fills, and there it lies as the morning broadens, rising slowly out of the sea as the ship stands in. Not mountains, not cliffs, nothing grand, a low green country, lying along the edge of the water as far as sight runs to north and south. Sand at its foot, pines at its crown, unbroken, unbuilt, breathing its smell out over the sea. And behind it, the whole of America, going back and back into a distance no man aboard can imagine. And the little girl is up on her father's shoulders again, and she is the one who says it, in a voice that carries the length of the deck. It is bigger than England, she says. You can see it is bigger, and no one laughs, because she is right. You can, even from here, even seeing nothing but its hem, you can, all that forenoon the ship closes the land, and the capes of Virginia open ahead of her. The two low green arms that guard the mouth of the Chesapeake, a doorway of water, miles wide. And here the ship does a thing that puzzles the passengers and satisfies you, because you know her ways now. She rounds up, backs her topsails, and stops, and waits, rolling easy in the swell off the southern cape, with a flag flying at her fore. She is asking for a pilot. No stranger sails into the Chesapeake by his own judgment. Hale tells the rail full of passengers, not with the shoals that pave that entrance, called the Horseshoe by men who have left keels on it. The bay must come out and lead you in by the hand, and in the early afternoon, out from behind the southern cape, comes the hand, a small swift slope, sails patched brown and white, leaning to the sea breeze, handled the way you have learned to recognize as beautiful. And she runs up under your lee and rounds neat as a swallow. and a man comes up the ship's side and over the rail, and stands on the deck among you. The first American, he is 60, if he is a day, burned the color of a saddle, white stubble on his jaw, dressed in loose, faded clothes, with no coat at all, and he shakes the captain's hand like an old debt and looks about the ship, at the rigging, at the crowd of pale, eager passengers staring at him as if he had stepped out of a book, and something in his weathered face allows itself half a smile. "Welcome to Virginia," he says. "You will find her hot, green, and glad of you." His voice is English, and it is not. The words are the words of home, but they have been left out in this sun a generation, and something has happened to them. The vowels gone longer and easier, the pace unhurried. A man speaking a language that has begun, quietly, without asking anyone's leave, to become another language. You will hear that voice again. You think your children will speak in it. He takes the ship, the way a pilot does, standing by the helm with his eyes on water that looks like all other water, and reading it like a page. A spoke this way, a half point that keep her so, and the ship gathers way and stands in between the green capes, out of the ocean that has carried you for 63 days, and the long Atlantic swell that has never once stopped moving under you in all those weeks rises one last time, and eases, and lies down, and is gone. Flat water. The ship glides, and around her opens not a harbor, not a river mouth, but a country made of water, the Chesapeake, reaching away northwest, farther than the eye can follow. Shores of forest on either hand, the afternoon light lying gold on miles of it, ospreys turning over the shallows, and the pilot at the helm, easy as a man driving a lane he was born on. Inside the capes, the water is the road, he says, to no one in particular. Yonder bay runs 200 miles up into the country, and every river off her runs miles more. And the ships sail right up into the fields and load at the planter's own door. He eases a spoke, spits over the rail with ceremony, and delivers the first geography lesson of your American life. You do not go to town here, he says. There is hardly a town to go to. The water goes to everybody's house. The ship stands up the Jimmy, as he calls the James River, on the last of the sea breeze and the young flood, and the evening comes down green and gold and utterly still, the first stillness in 9 weeks, and the anchor goes down at last off a wooded point, in soft brown river water, to wait for morning and the tide. The cable rumbles out, the ship swings, settles, stops, truly stops, and out of the forest, close aboard, over water smooth as a pond at home, comes the sound of America at nightfall. And it is not silence at all. It is frogs, thousands upon thousands of frogs, and crickets in their millions, and some strange sweet nightbird whistling in the dark trees, a whole continent of small voices singing at once, and the passengers stand at the rail in the warm green scented dark and listen to it the way they listened to the letter by the fire at Gravesend. You made it. The frogs are singing, if you choose to hear it that way, and every soul aboard chooses to. You made it. You made it. You made it. Morning on the James River, and you wake to a world that has forgotten how to move. You lie a moment in your berth, waiting for the roll that has rocked you for 63 nights. And it does not come, and your body keeps reaching for it, the way a tongue reaches for a pulled tooth. The ship lies still as a house. Through the planking comes green light off the water, moving in slow ribbons across the deckhead, and the smell of the whole world has changed in the night. Mud and leaf and sweet water. And up on deck, somebody is laughing. And there is another sound, small and rhythmic and wooden, coming nearer across the water. Oars. You come up the ladder into a morning already warm, mist burning off the river in gold smoke. Forest standing along both banks with its feet in the water. And there, pulling out from the southern shore, come two boats, log canoes. The pilot calls them, each one hollowed whole out of a single great tree, handled by a man and a boy apiece. And they are loaded to the gunwales with the one cargo on earth this ship's company would riot for. Fresh food. The boats come alongside, and a market assembles itself against the ship's planking in 5 minutes flat, baskets swaying up on lines, coins and barter swaying down. The whole rail lined with passengers 3 deep. And what comes over that rail, friend, deserves to be told slowly. The way it was eaten, bread, real bread, soft loaves baked yesterday in some farm oven ashore, still smelling of the oven. And when the first loaf is torn open, the smell of it goes down the deck, and men close their eyes where they stand. After 9 weeks of biscuit knocked on wood, bread that gives under the thumb is not food. It is news. News that the hard part is over, delivered straight to the mouth. Then apples, last autumn's keepers, from some cool cellar, wrinkled and sweet. And the sound of the deck that morning is the sound of 80 people crunching. A sound none of them have heard since England. Green stuff. Spring onions and cresses and young greens that the older folk eat almost solemnly, knowing in their bones what it is worth after a long salt voyage. Eggs by the basket, a crock of butter, yellow as a coin, and peaches, the pilot's own contribution from his sloop, the first peach that most souls aboard have ever held. And the little girl takes one bite and looks up at her mother with an expression of such pure, betrayed astonishment. That food was allowed to be like this all along, and nobody told her. That the whole afterdeck laughs out loud. The goat gets the apple parings and the outer leaves, and eats them with the dignity of a creature who never doubted. And while the feast goes on, the anchor comes up, and the ship stands on up the river with the young flood under her. The last miles of a 3,000-mile road, and you spend that day at the rail, watching your new country slide by at a walking pace. Close enough now to read. What you read is trees. That is the first truth of America. And it goes on all day. Forest to the waterline, mile upon mile. Oaks and chestnuts and pines of a size that makes the stonemason mutter professionally. Timber, standing thick as wheat, where in England there would be field upon field, village upon village. For long stretches there is no mark of man at all. Only the green wall and the brown river and the ospreys. And the country feels not empty but unbegun. A place where the world is still mostly promise, and you understand the letters at last. There is room here. Room is the very substance of the place. It presses on you from both banks. And then, at a bend, the forest opens, and you read the second truth. A plantation stands down to the river. Tobacco field. Your first, long ranks of broad-leaved green running back from the water in rows, straighter than any plowing you ever did, shimmering in the heat. A house of timber, whitewashed, set on a rise, modest by the measure of an English manor, but sitting its land like one, outbuildings, barns, a windmill turning slow, and at the river's edge, on posts out over the water, a wooden wharf with hogsheads ranked upon it, the great barrels that tobacco travels in, waiting for a ship exactly like yours. There are people on the wharf, and in the field rows beyond, and you stand at the rail and look at them. And this is the moment the crossing has been carrying you toward all along. So we will not look away from it. Some of the people working that shore are African. You see them play in the clear morning light. Men moving hogsheads on the wharf. Women and men, both in the tobacco rows. Dark hands moving along the green leaves. And a white man on a horse at the field's edge, sitting still, watching them work. You have seen African faces before. A sailor or two on the Thames. A servant behind a merchant in London. You have never seen this. And something in you knows at once, before any thought arrives, that this is different. This is a system, worked out and settled and old already in its ways. The pilot follows your look, and being a plain-spoken man, he gives it to you plain, the way the colony itself would. Bound labor, he says, same as some aboard here are bound, and he nods, not unkindly, toward the waist where the indentured folk stand at the rail. Only theirs has an end written in it. He says, 4 years, 5, 7, and then free with dues paid, those yonder. And he looks at the wharf a moment, at the men rolling the great barrels in the sun. Theirs has no end written, not for them, nor for their children after them. The law here made it so, going on 30 years now, and more ships come every year carrying nothing else. He is quiet a beat, working the helm a spoke. Virginia is built of tobacco, he says finally, and tobacco is built of hands. And the colony has settled its mind about whose hands, and a wise new man learns how the country lies before he speaks on it. That is the whole of what I will say, and more than I am asked. He says no more, and neither does the rail full of passengers. And the plantation slides astern in the sunshine, beautiful and terrible at once. And you stand there, with your half-eaten apple in your hand, a young man, 4 years bound, looking at people bound for all their lives and their children's lives. And whatever thoughts you have them in silence, the way most aboard have them, and the river carries you all on together toward your different fates. But mark this, and mark it here at the rail, with the taste of apple still in your mouth, because it is the plainest truth in this whole story. The ocean you crossed was one ocean, and it carried in those same years two utterly different cargoes to this same green shore. And the difference between a hard bargain and no bargain at all is the difference between your life and theirs. And there will be more to say of this before we sleep, when the story is done and owes its full accounting. The river bends. The forest closes again. Green and singing. By late afternoon, the ship comes to her journey's true end. A broad reach of the river, where a small port straggles along the northern bank. A church tower. A street of timber houses. Warehouses at the water. A battery of guns on the point. And riding at anchor off the town, a dozen ships, ocean ships, English colors at their sterns, loading tobacco out of lighters, and the sight of that little wooden town after 9 weeks of water lands on the company like a psalm. It is no London. It is barely a market town. It is the finest city any soul aboard has ever seen. The anchor goes down for the last time in the golden evening, the cable rumbling away, the ship swinging to her rest in the stream among her sisters, and the sails are furled along the yards for the last time by the last of the light. And the crew, when the work is done, come down and stand about the deck, strangely idle, a shipload of people with nowhere further to go. The captain has the spirit's cask broached, one tot all around. Crew and passengers alike share, and share alike to the last, and he lifts his own tin can to the company in the dusk and says simply, 64 days, all souls, and drinks. And 80 people drink with him. And it is not a loud toast. It is a quiet one, the quietest and deepest you will ever stand in, because every man, woman, and child holding a cup in that twilight is counting the same count. All souls, every single soul that sailed out of the Thames stands on this deck tonight, breathing this green air, listening to these frogs tune up along the darkening shore. Tomorrow the boats will come out from the town. Tomorrow there will be officials and merchants and planters, papers and inspections, names read from lists. Tomorrow, the village that carried itself across an ocean will be taken apart, family by family, fate by fate, and handed into its separate futures, and your own folded paper waits in your chest for its half with the matching teeth. But that is tomorrow, and this story has one night left in it, and the night is warm, and the sand in the half-hour glass by the helm is still, for this one evening, yours. The evening settles over the anchorage, the way a quilt settles over a bed, slow and warm and final. And the ship, for the first time in 64 days, has nothing to do. You feel it everywhere aboard. And it is the strangest feeling of the whole crossing. All those weeks, she was a working creature. Every hour of her. Sails drawing, rigging, singing, helm alive in a man's hands. The whole of her leaning west, with 80 lives in her belly. Tonight she rides to her anchor, in still brown water, with her canvas furled and her yards squared. And she is just wood again, just a house standing in a river. And the water that talked along her planking every night of your new life has nothing to say. You stand in the waste after supper listening for her, out of pure habit, and what you hear instead is the shore. Frogs in their thousands, crickets ringing away back into the forest for miles. The sound going up like heat, somewhere over the dark water, from one of the anchored tobacco ships. A fiddle playing something slow, and a dog barking at the edge of the little town. An actual dog, in an actual street, barking at some doorstep matter that is none of your business, and the homeliness of that sound nearly undoes you. 64 days. And the first voice of the land is a dog with an opinion. The passengers are all on deck this last night. Nobody willing to go below to the berths, while the evening is this soft, and the families spread their bedding under the awnings one more time. And the talk is low and runs all one direction. Tomorrow, tomorrow the boats, tomorrow the lists, tomorrow the futures. The stonemason sits on his tool bags, oiling his chisels by lantern light, getting his hands ready for a country that he has heard has no stone to speak of. And he has decided to disbelieve that rumor until it is proven on him personally. The little girl is asleep already with her scrap of paper in her fist, the pinch of Virginia sand from the sounding lead folded inside it. First landholder of her family, and the old knitting woman is up, propped in her deck chair of chests and gratings, needles going again, slow but going, because she has decided, she announces to the company in general, to finish the gray thing she has been knitting since Gravesend and wear it ashore. And if anyone thinks she crossed an ocean to arrive with idle hands, they have not been paying attention these 9 weeks. You take your turn at the water cask at dusk. The ration ease now with the river so close, and you drink your measure slow out of old habit. And it comes to you, standing there in the line, one last time, that you will miss this. Not the thirst, the line, the measured fairness of it, the faces in it, the whole small machinery of a village that carried itself over an ocean by sharing out its days in bells and its water in quarts. Tomorrow the village dissolves. Nothing this side of heaven will ever again gather these particular 80 souls in one place. And only tonight does it occur to you what a thing they made together, without ever once calling it anything. And then, a little before midnight, comes the hour you have been circling all evening. Your watch. There is no need for it. You know that. The ship is anchored in soft mud in a guarded river. Her voyage done. And an anchor watch is one man with a lantern minding the cable. And the mate would excuse you with a wave. But the sand does not know the voyage is over. And the glass stands in its frame by the silent helm. And some things want finishing properly. And hail, when you come up the ladder at the change of the watch, is standing exactly where you knew he would be, at the rail by the binnacle, pipe cold in his teeth, waiting to see if you would come. Neither of you says anything for a while. The river slides past the rudder with a small night-long chuckle, the one piece of water talk she has left, away over the town, behind the church tower. The sky has the faint warmth of a settlement, wood fires banked in 100 hearths, and the frogs sing, and the sand falls in the lamplight, and you stand your last watch in the finest silence you have ever kept with another human being. When the glass runs out, you turn it, sharp and exact, and take the lanyard, and strike 8 bells. They go out over the anchorage in pairs. Ding ding, ding ding, ding ding, ding ding, round and true across the still water, and from the anchored ships around you, one after another, faint and far, the answering bells of other keepers come back across the dark, each ship telling all the others the same midnight, and from forward, from your own bow, the anchor watch calls it low and easy, the last time it will ever be called for you. All's well. Hale takes his pipe out of his teeth. 64 days, he says, and I never once had to wonder, was the glass turned? He looks at you a moment in the binnacle light. I have shipped boys 20 years at sea. I could not say that of. Then he puts the pipe back. And that is the whole speech. And it is enough. And you both know it is more than enough. Toby comes up the ladder as the bells die, right on his cue, because of course he has been lying awake below, counting your strokes one last time, checking your arithmetic to the end. His wrist is out of its sling these past days, thin but working, and he flexes it for you by way of documents presented, and holds out his good hand, and you set the glass into it, midstream, sand still falling, the way it was set into yours, the way it has been passed from keeper to keeper, down all the dark oceans of the world since men first went out on them. Mind, she does not gain on you. You tell him, I taught you that, he says, outraged. And you say that he did, and that a man should hear his own teaching come back at him once before he is grown. And Toby considers this, 12 years old, 4 crossings deep, wrist mended, glass in hand, and finds it acceptable, and takes up his post at the helm of time like a small commodore. And you are relieved, relieved, in every sense of that good old word. You go forward along the deck between the sleeping families, and you find the patch of planking by the foremast that has been yours these warm nights, and you lie down on your blanket with your boots off and your chest for a pillow, the wooden chest that has come the whole way, England folded inside it, the indenture flat at the bottom under your spare shirt, with its toothed edge waiting to be matched. Tomorrow it will be matched. Tomorrow a planter you have never met will read your name off a list, and 4 years of your life will begin. Hot years, hard ones. You have no illusions left about that. The pilot's plain voice saw to the last of them. But you have learned some things on this water that no master can be sold along with you. You can stand a watch. You can keep another man's sleep safe. You can be trusted with time itself in your 2 hands. And were night upon night, and the whole dark Atlantic is witness. The years will pass. You think? They will pass like the sand, grain by grain, watch by watch, and a man who knows how to turn the glass sharp and strike the hours true can walk out the far side of any measured thing still standing up. Above you, the stars are all in their stations, the same stars that stood over the middle watch 1,000 miles of ocean ago. And the North Star hangs steady over the dark forest. Now, instead of the dark sea, nailed in its place, minding its one duty. The frogs sing, the river chuckles at the rudder. Somewhere aft, small and faithful, Toby's first bell rings the half-hour. One single stroke, and the anchor watch answers it soft. All's well, and 80 souls sleep on their own tide of breathing. Anchored, arrived, delivered, and for the first night in 64 nights, you close your eyes without listening for anything at all. The watch is kept. It is somebody else's turn. Sleep, farmer. You are across. The record of those years will tell you that ships like this one crossed from England to the Chesapeake by the hundred, season upon season, and that the crossing you have just made was, by the measure of its day, a lucky one, and a well-run one, and that not every ship was lucky, and not every master ran fair. Some crossings took 12 weeks and worse. Some lost 1/10 of their people to fever and flux, and some lost far more. And the ocean floor between the old world and the new holds more of those stories than the record ever wrote down. The people who boarded those ships knew all this. The letters and the dockside talk hid none of it. And they went anyway. Tens upon tens of thousands of them in those years. And that is a fact worth lying still with for a moment. Whatever they were fleeing, and whatever they were seeking, they judged it worth 9 weeks, in a wooden world the size of a barn floor, on water no man could measure, toward a country most of them had seen only in a folded letter. Perhaps half of all the English souls who came to these colonies in those generations came the way you came, bound by indenture. 4 years, 5, 7, their passage paid in time. The record shows what became of them, and it is neither the fairy tale nor the horror story. It is the plain human middle. The years were hard, and the law was often on the master's side, and Virginia summers killed some of them before their papers ran out. But the papers did run out. They walked free in their tens of thousands, collected their freedom dues, their clothes and tools and corn, and they became the tenant farmers and craftsmen and small planters of the country, and the parents and grandparents of more American families than could ever now be counted. If your own people have been in America a very long time, it is better than an even chance that somebody in your line once stood at a rail like this one, 9 weeks gone from everything they knew, smelling pines in the dark. And the record tells the other truth, the one you saw from the river, and it must be told here as plainly as the pilot told it, because this story owes it, and so does every story of that shore. In those same years, on that same ocean, other ships were crossing, whose people signed nothing and chose nothing. Men and women and children taken out of Africa and carried to those same green rivers. And for them, there was no term of years, no freedom dues, no toothed paper, with an ending written in it. The law of Virginia had already made their bondage lifelong and their children's bondage after them. And in the years just ahead of 1715, the ships carrying them would come more and more often, until the tobacco country you sailed into was built, root and branch, on their unpaid lives. They crossed the same water you crossed. They heard the same bells, the same storms, in holds far crueler than yours. and no pilot's welcome waited for them, and no dues, and no walking free. Two rivers of people, carried by one ocean to one shore. One river with an ending written into its hardship, and one with none, and America was made of both. And a true accounting of that wooden world holds both, or it holds nothing. As for the ocean itself, it kept its secret a long while yet. The great prize posted in London the year before you sailed, the £20,000 for any man who could teach a ship her east and west, sat unclaimed through your whole lifetime, while masters went on crossing by sand, glass, and log line, and the noon sun, by near enough, minded well. It took a carpenter's son named John Harrison the better part of 50 years to build the impossible thing at last. A clock that kept true time at sea, and the day such clocks came aboard, the long age of guessing ended, and the age of knowing began, and something old and patient and brave quietly left the world with it. But the bells stayed. That is the small good ending hiding inside all of this. 300 years and more have gone by, and the watches of the sea are still kept, and ships still ring the half hours, and sailors standing the middle watch on dark water still answer the bell the old way. And if you were to go down to any working harbor on any coast of the world tonight, you could hear it for yourself, coming faint across the water at midnight. The sound of somebody awake so that everybody else can sleep, which is, when you come all the way down to it, the whole story you have just lived. An ocean was crossed, not by heroes, but by a village that shared its water fare, and knocked its biscuit, and trimmed its load even, and kept its watches, 1/2 hour of falling sand at a time, until the far shore sent out its pines to meet them. The anchorage is quiet now. The frogs have the night. Toby has the glass, and the sand is falling, soft and sure, and the next bell is not your concern, or yours, or yours. Somewhere, on some water, on some watch, somebody is always awake, minding the hours, keeping the sleep of others safe. Tonight, let it be your turn to be kept. The watch is set. The ship is home. Sweet dreams.